Should be working now, hopefully. Hey guys, how's everyone doing tonight? Having a little bit of internet issues over here, so if you can all let me know that it's working and that the sound is okay, that would be great. I just restarted the whole thing, so hopefully we'll be good to go. I'm gonna try to pull up the stream myself on YouTube to make sure it's going. Let's see here. A little bit of internet issue. There we go. Okay. All right. It's weird. The camera is always different from when I go live to what it looks like here. Let's see. Should be good. All right. So, how's everyone doing tonight? I hope everyone is well. So tonight we're going to do something, I guess, slightly different. It's still, I'm open to every single market question. I assume we'll probably spend a lot of the time talking about the market, but I also thought I would just open it up to talking about anything in Pokemon. We can open it up to general, finance, economics, personal stuff a little bit, I guess. I probably will not, they're going to be, keep it keep it appropriate, please. And PG, and I probably won't answer. There will be some things I just may not feel comfortable answering or sharing to the internet. So I hope people can be respectful of that. But but yes, I am open to some different types of questions tonight, and just to hang out and be maybe a little bit more of an open book and kind of see if it's fun or interesting to have it be a little bit more open, kind of see where it goes. So I hope everyone's doing well. Swami says the Bulls are getting hammered right now. Don't love to hear that. I'm surprised a little bit because I know Chris Middleton went down. Chief Ken says, I like the setup though. It feels like I'm in a vault room. Jake, will the Celtics beat the Nets in 4 games or 5? So the big news is Robert Williams is coming back for the next game. So if he, that's going to help. And the truth is even though we're up 2-0, the Nets are a scary team. And the series, if the Nets win the next 2 games, the series, could easily go 7 type of series. So, if we win this next game, the Celtics will be in pretty good shape. All right. Hey, Beluga Will and Curdle, Crazy Matt. Ballin or Ballin. Nice to see familiar names. Catch 'em all. Dan here. Good to see you, Dan. Hope you're having a good night. Team Trubbish, Vedu. Nice to see you. Ray. Michael Smith. The Green Shiz. Good to see you all. So I will start just answering questions as I see them. Let's see what we got first. Jeremy Judkins has a first question. What's your best general life advice? Oh my gosh. I'm not sure I have. So this is going to be just me being completely honest. Personality for what it is on display. I don't really have any life advice. I guess if I were forced to give life advice, it would be something like, I think that every person is different and is at different stages of their life and needs different things at different times. And I think in life there's too much advice giving in general, and there's not enough listening and empathy and encouraging people to kind of figure things out. And I think we're always obsessed with finding answers to things when in reality things are generally pretty nuanced and pretty individual. And I guess as a therapist, working with people, that's what I've found in working with people. And the best thing that you can bring to someone, certainly I can bring, and we can bring, me and anyone who I work with, we can bring our intellect and try to problem solve and work through specific issues. I think that's great. But overall, um, so much of life is about patience and sort of tinkering and kind of trying new things. I think being open is a huge deal. And I think naturally, unless someone has been kind of traumatized, unfortunately, just a little bit too much by difficult things, I do think that life in some ways forces people to kind of be open. It exposes you to different types of people, to different types of ideas. I think trying to embrace different ideas, different types of people, is really good general life advice. Looking to be growing and changing, but also understanding that there is no arrival point. There is no, in my opinion, there is no, you know, guru and life expert, and there is no one religion or one philosophy for me personally that encompasses all wisdom. And I think that there are philosophies and religions that are very nuanced and beautiful and have tons of wisdom, and a lot of them even have like contradictions, and I think all of that is part of life. And I think when you have that sort of attitude, it really helps you empathize and be a lot more accepting of other people and less sort of judgmental and critical about the differences that you may have with someone else. And I think that's generally a positive, because it's nice to not be lonely and isolated. It's nice to get along with people, and it's nice to listen and really be open and not go through life with sort of your agenda and sort of what is right, and trying to sort of get other people onto your side or your team with your sort of biases. We all do that to some extent. It's unavoidable, but that's my best general life advice, or stuff that I try and I guess live that way as much as possible. Eusebius is not alive without internet issues. Yeah, we haven't had. Oh no, I think we did have a live recently with internet issues. I was about to say it's been better recently, but I think we did have one that wasn't so great recently. Jamie Crisvier says, Pokenomics. Question: who will gain more value in the end, the flipper or the investor? So I can share some thoughts on this. Of course, there's no correct answer, and also we'd have to define what a flipper versus investor is. There's immediate flipping. There's very, very long-term investing, if we want to think like 10 years, 20 years. And then there's everywhere in between, people who buy items and then flip them within 6 months, a year. We could maybe call those people investors. And if we want to, I do like the word speculator. Even though we are investing, there's a bit more risk, I think, in this area and I think the word speculation kind of captures that, which I think is good. So I'm going to try to use that word a little bit more, but I'm sure I'm going to say investing a lot, and it's going to slip out. But it depends on so many factors that I can't give one answer, right? It depends on, first of all, how the market does over time. Second of all, the better the market does over time and the quicker that movement is, the more people kind of constantly flipping into the market might miss those upswings. This is particularly true for things like stocks, particularly if you're a day trader, because there's all sorts of statistics and things that are talked about online around this. It's very common knowledge, that if you miss some very key days in the stock market because you sold an item, or a stock right before some big 5% or 10% or sort of upswing in that stock, you might miss on all of the growth in that stock or for like the next 3 years, in one day. These types of things. And then if you happen to buy at a really high point right before it drops, and then sell at the bottom and not hold through that, flipping can be really bad. Flipping or day trading. Now, I think flipping in Pokemon, part of why flipping works so well in Pokemon is that you can buy items at like lower then you can sell that afternoon. And not because the market has changed, but because you were able to identify a really cheap auction or able to buy something in a lot, and then you can take that item and then list it for best offer. And if you have an active eBay page, or you just have lots and lots of items and eventually it will sell, you can make sort of immediate profit that way. And then it doesn't really matter if the Pokemon market goes significantly up or down. It's more about, is there just liquidity, and how quickly can I turn those items over? And of course, the quicker you can turn those items over, the quicker then you can take that money, put it in another item, and rinse and repeat. Will that do better financially than sort of like if I just kept everything in my collection for 10 years? Would that do better than if I was constantly selling things and reinvesting into other things? Probably not. If I'm doing a good job of both flipping and holding the things that are probably going to perform well, I think being an active manager is generally going to be better, particularly in something like this. Now, of course, there are going to be fees and there are going to be taxes, and part of why in stocks, and I don't claim to be an expert in stocks or anything. I've had I've had good personal success, and my father's a financial advisor, and I've learned a lot from him throughout my life. But his attitude and sort of my attitude on stocks is always like, you never sell, you just keep it in there forever. It's not about, you're not trying to catch a good month or a good week, and you can't buy the stock under market and then later in the afternoon, list it for higher and sell it for higher, unless do the optimization of that market. It's totally different. And so because of that, I don't like day trading in stocks, but I think flipping, if you know what you're doing in the Pokemon market, even to sort of add to your collecting or investing, or speculating, or however long-term speculation, or however you want to phrase it, that hybrid makes the most sense. I think that if you are flipping and you're buying items at like full market value, and then you're just hoping you're going to be able to flip it a few months later for higher, that could work out really badly. And we've definitely seen that happen. If you're buying a modern sealed product at, above MSRP or at a really high rate, and they do a reprint and then you sell it at that reprint, you might lose 30-40% of your money after fees, if you time that poorly. Hopefully people out there are not doing that. I think most people understand the reprint cycles. They understand to try to buy it at the lowest part. And then if it does come back down after a reprint, at least these days, the prices have really come back up quickly after that reprint. So, when we get maybe the next Evolving Skies reprint or Brilliant Stars, reprints, we don't know how big the sizes of those reprints are going to be, but let's say it brings it all the way back down to 120, there'd be a decent case to be made that, if you hold it for another 6 months, a year, a few years, it might get back to that 180. It may not, nobody knows. But if you could buy that booster box at like $40 or $50, like I'm buying a slab that might be worth $100, you're already potentially netting that $50, even if the card doesn't go up. I try to do both all the time, right? I'm trying to buy under market and then also buy those things under market that I think are going to trend well over time, and try to buy them at the best possible time. I do think the whole it's time in the market versus timing the market in Pokemon does not make nearly as much sense as it makes in the stock market. And there's certainly some wisdom in that, but it's for the reasons I just stated, before, it's a different sort of beast, that this market. And I feel less confident in the future of this market than I do big multinational companies, even though I'm very confident in this market. And that's just, I hope that doesn't seem, I view that as just a very reasonable risk assessment, of the situation, that I love this stuff. It's so fun that it's worth the risk. And it could potentially outperform a lot of stuff. I mean, I've way outperformed, any stock I could have bought, including Tesla, which is crazy, in the last few years. You know, will I continue to, it might be interesting in a number of years to look at my stock portfolio and see how it did versus my card portfolio or whatever, if we want to say. I just have no way of predicting that or answering that. But I'm more confident in the multinational companies because Pokemon is so dependent on people continuing to have demand for Pokemon more broadly and for the cards specifically, and versus companies that are working to increase in value over time, that already have such strangleholds on the area, of the how to put it, like the area that they're doing business in. They have really strong moats, and they have upside if they have potential to grow in other areas of the world, or are working on new businesses or new products, what have you. Jamie Chris VA says, that was the question. Yeah, so for those who are still coming in, you can ask me anything tonight. How often do I ride the bike in the back? So I try to ride it every day that I'm not playing basketball. I'm playing basketball like 3 days a week right now, and I try to just go on for like 20 minutes. The other days, it's a stationary bike actually. It's and but I did not exercise at all for like a year and a half or 2 years during the pandemic. I'm trying to like get back into like a little bit of shape where I can just play basketball, and I play full court basketball, and I'm still now about 3 or 4 months into it. I'm still like getting winded pretty easily, and it's for anyone out there who plays sports, it's just like so much more fun when you can play hard and you don't have to like take plays off, and I'm still having to take plays off, so I'm still working on getting there. Let's see. Let's make sure this is all working. Should be working. I'm having an issue now on YouTube. It's not coming up. I just want to make sure we're still good here. And then I'll get back to answering questions. It's so slow tonight, my internet. Let's see. Okay. What's my... let's see. Singh says, can we talk about the political state of the country? Sure. I can share my thoughts. I kind of answered in the first one a little bit. I am someone who... I really don't want to offend anyone one way or the other. I'm very much of a sort of... I like debate, and when I'm with certain members of my family who are more on the political right in the United States, I love having conversations and hearing their opinions and how they got their opinions, where they get their info from. And then with people who are more left in my family, and I have both, like to the extremes, honestly, on both sides. I also love talking about it, hearing their opinions. Because of the school system and where I grew up in the country, as a child and as a teenager, I'm more familiar with sort of left-wing general thinking and progressive general thinking. But as an adult, I've actually spent more time in more conservative spaces, trying to like understand and get a sense of, and I've lived in some conservative areas. I've done therapy with a number of very conservative towns in rural areas in Pennsylvania and other places at various times. So I'm a student of like I'm very interested in people. Why I like politics is I'm very interested in like the psychology of like, why do you vote for who do you vote for, how, like what moves you, what inspires you, what do you think's important, what's important in your life versus what do you think's important in others. And I like the conversation. I don't like the polarization. I don't like the rudeness. I don't like the defensiveness. But when things are really, really personal, I understand. And sometimes politics does get really, really personal. Sometimes I think people are just heated because they want to like win or be right or feel some sort of like control. And I'm very empathetic to that. I understand those feelings. Other times I do feel like there's specific issues that are very, very personal because you've experienced some sort of trauma, some sort of difficulty in your life around that specific issue. I'm much more understanding or empathetic of people who have maybe a radical opinion or a polarized opinion because they've had those types of experiences. I think it's completely valid. I try to study the issues. But I by no means. I'm very much a person who's sort of like, what do we really, what does your average person, even who consumes a lot of political content, really know about what's really going on? I tend to be skeptical, cautious of people in power, and when people have a lot of incentive to sort of lie to me or spin sort of a narrative that suits them but isn't necessarily telling me the whole reality or the truth. I think that's a big problem in politics. I think that's why there's a lot of distrust, the media and sort of politics coming together. As far as my specific political views, it's a constant work in progress, and I'm more interested in like debate and conversations. I don't I'm one of those people who just does not feel a need to identify with a party, and is attracted to, I guess, people who to me seem reasonable and open and I like the idea of problem solving when possible, and seem to be more focused on that than ego or growing their own power. None of that is particularly I think unusual. I think probably the majority of people feel similarly to me, and that's where I'm at with that sort of stuff. If you have specific political questions, I guess I can answer some of them. I may have nothing to say though. And my politics have definitely shifted at different times in my life, and there have been different politicians throughout the years that I've liked or not liked. Ballin asked Jake, "What's your favorite type of sneaker?" I'm definitely not like any sort of sneakerhead or sneaker aficionado. I can't even answer that honestly. I just buy, to be completely honest with you, I just buy something that feels like fairly cheap and comfy. I have like a pair of running shoes. I think they're called like Ghost something, and they just had like high reviews on Amazon and were reasonably priced. And whenever I'm buying something, I just like go online and I look up like what are the best 5 running shoes of the year, and then I tend to go to like the affordable option, but is also very highly rated. I do the same thing for basketball. So I got like some Ghost running shoe, and basketball I have some sort of Nike comfortable shoe. It's not any like player's shoe, not anything fancy. But I think it's really cool that people like, I'm obviously a huge collector, and so I totally get why people love shoes and collecting shoes. It just was never a part of my life, so it just never I never got particularly into it, but I think it's really cool. And like I love those YouTube videos or other videos that I've seen of people with like huge shoe collections, like showing their shoes. It's also just fun to see people passionate in whatever they collect, because I can resonate with that. Aiden M says, "Do you believe in the afterlife?" Oh my gosh. Oh, I don't know. I really have no idea. Man, do I believe in the afterlife? Yeah, I just don't know. I couldn't possibly answer something like that. It's outside of my my realm or ability to answer. I have been a pretty religious person and a pretty spiritual person often on in the sense that I've studied a lot of religions and I practice some religion, decent amount of religion in my life, and I very interested in philosophy and ideas, but also putting ideas and philosophy into practice and trying different things. So but I don't feel like I have any answers that are sort of uniformed or any really strong belief there. Marty the Martian says, "Where do you check prices of Japanese cards? Is it only eBay?" So we're going to go like Pokemon questions, life questions. It should be interesting. Marty the Martian, where do you check prices of Japanese cards? Is it only eBay? Um, yeah, pretty much. I think eBay is the main place that I'm checking prices constantly. A little bit of TCG player, just talking cards in general, not necessarily, not Japanese cards specifically. Um, uh, every once in a while, I pop onto like Facebook or Mercari, and I just kind of see what things are selling for. Yahoo Japan a little bit, but eBay is definitely the main source that I would go to kind of check to see what's going on in the market. Ray says, Jake, have you seen the recent Final Fantasy TCG full arts? To me, it's really opened the collectability of the sets. I have not. I I played Final Fantasy a little bit. I really should go back and like play all the Final Fantasy games because it's like totally up my alley. I just didn't play them much as a kid, so I just never really got into that world like other people have. So I just haven't. I'm just not a Final Fantasy fan, but I'm not like an anti Final Fantasy. I just don't have a lot of personal experience with it. So it's not a market that I look at closely or follow. Although I do hear bits and pieces, obviously, in our Patreon and our Discord, people talking about it sometimes. And then I have some friends who are like very into it, very bullish on it, and talk to me about the rarity of some cards and just sort of their overall excitement. Hopefully, the hobby does really well, and I'm glad that people are loving it and enjoying it. I think it's great that so many card hobbies have been doing well. Magikarp says Nets in six. That's a pretty that would be pretty tough. It's possible. Listen, the Nets are a good team. I think I don't think what's been going on with Kevin Durant is he's too good of a player, even with all of the physicality the Celtics are putting him through, and I think he's probably just exhausted too, just with the number of minutes he's been playing, and for the really carrying the team for months to even get them into the playoffs, because there was doubt if they were going to even get in the playoffs for a while. But I think it's going to be tough, particularly with Robert Williams coming back. I think that's very highly unlikely, but anything's possible. Apple says, "Hey Jake, what are your thoughts on the Pikachu Worlds collection from 2010? I think the illustrations are really cool and unique. As a collector, yeah, I really like it. As someone who's like speculating on it, I'm not sure. A cool item, something that isn't too expensive and fun and good for Pikachu collectors. So it's definitely a enjoyable item." Seth Dudley says, "Kyrie quit in game 2. Yeah." He seemed a bit out of it, and they were not giving him the ball, which was interesting. They didn't seem to be trying to engage him in the offense. They just kind of kept going through Durant, which was strange. Who knows? Will Chamberlain says, "When is the best time to buy singles for new sets for the cheapest? I know it's after release, but how long after? A few months, year, longer? Thanks." So there is no definitive answer to that. For me, it's more about price point. It's more about waiting for a card to hit a price point that I think is reasonable based on my past experience in the hobby. So for example, generally speaking, like this is how my brain would work, okay? All my answers are always going to be nuanced on these things. This is how my brain would work. If I think the alt arts are slightly better than the rainbow rares, all right, so I'm going to compare alt arts to rainbow rares here. Like rainbow rares from Sun and Moon compared to like Sword and Shield alt arts. So I generally like to wait. So the rainbow rares right now, a lot of the Sun and Moon sort of like lesser rainbow rares, like graded in a 9 and a 10. Ungraded are going for like $5 to $10 to $20 mostly, outside of your any of like the bigger, more expensive ones. And there are a lot of bigger, more expensive ones, particularly in a lot of those team up Unbroken Bonds, Cosmic Eclipse type sets. But generally speaking, some of the lower end ones are going for that. It would be nice to get those alt arts at about that price, ideally. I'm not sure they'll ever get down to that price, given their popularity, but I wouldn't be shocked if some of the lesser ones come down to that price and really stick at that price once more product is open, particularly after reprints. The graded cards of the alt arts are way, way, way overpriced right now because just not enough. The PSA, the cost of grading a PSA is too high. We need to wait till the cost of grading comes back down to like that $10 to $15 mark. The fact that you can buy like Sun and Moon rainbow rares in like PSA 9, PSA 10 for like $25 to $100, but these alt arts are going for like $500, $600 sometimes in PSA 10 really reflect that. There's actually going to be a lot less of those Sun and Moon rainbow rares, in my opinion, out in the world eventually than there are going to be these alt arts. But right now, there's way more of those rainbow rares because they've been graded for a lot longer and more of them got in. Now, there's going to be a ton more of both, I think, over the years. But to answer your question, it's sort of like it's very nuanced because my understanding of the market allows me to break that down and to understand why something is probably going to come down. And it's not just about the amount of time. It's not just 1 month, 2 months, 3 months after. It's also being very engaged and listening to the market. I like to buy things when people start talking what I would view as like irrationally negative about something. When someone gets bored of something that they once really liked, that's generally a really good time to buy. It's in that interim of like people are bored of it and it's not yet old enough to get exciting again. It's not yet rare enough. Rare is not the right word, but it's not kind of like there's still too much of it out there. It's still overflooding the market and it's just not old enough to kind of revisit yet. Like people don't want to revisit things that are only 3 years old, 2 years old. They want to revisit things that are like 5, 10 years old. And so generally that window will probably be your best bet if you can really be patient. Now, there's absolutely no guarantee. It's completely up to you. That's how I think of it. And I'm happy sort of missing out on things if like these alternate alt arts just continue to go up and up and up from here. I probably will not buy them for another 10 years. And then if they really hit a plateau or sometime in 10 years and they really, because like it would take like 10 years at really high prices for me to feel comfortable that they're going to sustain those high prices, because I think it takes 5 to 10 years at least to know how something is going to age in demand. I think probably the number one thing that I think that people miss, or some people miss, is they're way overestimating what is popular today, that the fact that things are popular today is going to make them popular in the future. The reason why I feel more comfortable about something like Gold Stars or WotC or Original Nintendo EX is because they've been popular for many years and been the most expensive items in the hobby for many years. And it's very unlikely that popularity is going to shift. Whereas the popularity for or against Hidden Fates, or for or against Rainbow Rares, or for or against the whole Sword and Shield era, for or against the gold cards, or for or against the alt arts, it's much more uncertain. And that's not me telling you. I think it's absolutely fine to say and reasonable to say, well, the alt arts are more interesting, unique, and better looking than the rainbow rare, so I'm going to pay more for those. I think that's reasonable to factor that in. But that's that. If you believe that, then I might move the price 5 to 10% more than I'd be willing to pay for a rainbow rare or something like that. I'm very conservative and cautious, both when it comes to my collection, because I have huge collection goals and I need to conserve my money. And then certainly if I'm trying to speculate something, I would never buy something at or anywhere near market, just to be completely blunt. So oftentimes there are just still so many great deals out there. And if you're really patient and you don't buy anything, there might be months where I don't buy anything and I'm just waiting for a big lot, a big score, and then I kind of have the cash available and I'm able to get that great deal. So you're passing up some of those good deals or potentially good deals for that really great one. That's how I think a lot about this stuff. I also think with some of this modern, I would really be looking, if you want to collect a lot of it, I would really be waiting for binder collections to come up on the market. I do think we're starting to see them. I'm buying some of them, but I think just like in the past, I bought a lot of binder collections of like XY era and Sun and Moon era when they kind of died down and people were kind of done with Pokemon and were moving on and they just kind of wanted to liquidate their binders, which happens. There's a person who probably spent $2,000 on packs and I'm buying their whole collection for like $150. That's the type of thing I'm looking for. And I would assume that those opportunities will present themselves. And as a collector or anything, that's probably the best time to buy those, and the best way to buy them. I think sometimes people are too concerned with the right time to buy things, and it's actually more important the way you buy it. I think buying a large lot at under market could be more important than the exact time you buy it or waiting for the perfect time. Obviously, you're trying to do both at the same time. So hopefully that helps. And again, you saying few months, a year longer, it completely depends. And the market has responded to different sets differently, and it also depends on the boom period, right? So like Hidden Fates had a really long run of being very, I think, a lot more than some other sets, in part because it was such a huge part of the boom and it was such a unique set. Whereas sets that are like less unique are probably not going to stay as popular as long, and thus the prices are probably going to dip down quicker. So Pac-Man says the Warriors are looking nice. Yes, they are. Yeah, the Warriors are looking real strong. Yeah, Pool is looking really good. Game Law Politics says, now that bidding on eBay lots / collections is much more competitive, do you have any tips on scoping under the radar deals? Bidding on lots of things, losing the majority of items. I'm still buying stuff, and I'm still buying collections, and I still am getting good value. So, but again, I'm not a business in this, so I don't need to buy things. Like, I don't have to continue to churn inventory. If I did, I would need a lot more revenue streams. Like, if to like completely quit my job or make no money at all from Patreon or from my therapy profession, I would need to have distributor connections and be like, Troll and Toad evoing like my like sealed product that I'm getting from distributors to make those like $5 to $10 to $15 on all of those boxes. And I would need I don't think right now that I think right now it would be quite risky, to do what like Dan and Nick are doing, unless you have a lot of different things going on at once and a lot of different revenue sources, which they both do. I think it would be quite risky to assume that enough good deals are going to come on the market each month, and you're going to be able to actually sell them enough each month to make like $6,000 to $10,000 a month, after taxes. I think that without those other avenues would be pretty tough. I'm not, most of the stuff that I'm buying right now, I'm keeping and not quickly selling it into the market. There are some things that I am, sometimes I buy lots and I sell part of it, keep the rest. There are certain cards that I look for on Facebook groups and Verbank. There are certain cards that I target there, particularly players cards, cards kind of won by players. But outside of that, it's really just eBay, and I just constantly am searching and working at it. I've been literally 6 years of just, I'm constantly aware, I think, of pretty much like all, the majority of all those of the auctions or the auctions that I might be interested in. I'm just, I'm always searching, I'm always engaged, I'm always aware, and I win very, small percentages of them, but the ones that I win, I think, are really good deals. So, and I do, in the last few months, there's been a lot of deals. This month, I've been buying quite a bit less. I still probably buy a card or two or a lot or two a week right now, but there was a while where I was buying like 15 lots a day. So it kind of part of it is like I tend to buy out certain eras or certain types of cards because I think that they're really undervalued, and then I myself probably, buy all the ones that were coming on the market, and then it's a higher price, and I'm not attempting to do a buyout, but I'm, there just aren't that many more of them, and then they go up in and of themselves. So Team Trebuch says, do you have, the way that I do buyouts, it's not intentional, but I set a price target and I buy, that card or that type of card in that level of graded case or whatever at that value price. And and I say to myself, I have this much money available, so if 10 of them hit the market or 20 of them hit the market, I can very comfortably buy them all. And these are mostly $25, $30 cards we're talking here. I'm not doing these types of buyouts on $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 cards. But there are only 50 of some of these cards graded, 60 of some of these cards graded, and I might, over the next couple of years get maybe 15 to 20 of each of them. We'll see, and more will likely be graded, but that's the type of thing. That's kind of what I did with level X's and secret rares from black and white and primes and all that type of stuff, and that's how I sort of accumulated 15 to 20% of the entire population of those cards for a while before I started selling them. Very slow. Again, I'm going to be here for 10, 20, 30 years. I mean, I have no plan on leaving. It's not a rush, and there's so many different good things to buy, I think. Just being patient. If I don't buy anything for the next 3 months, I'll be absolutely fine with that and just enjoy my collection. It's part of the luxury of not running a business in Pokemon is that I don't need to ever buy anything. I don't need to make money on Pokemon by actually selling. And so I can just be patient and wait for the right deals, the items that I think are good, the items that I like, that I enjoy collecting, that I want for myself. Team Trubbish says, do you have any idea if there is a nostalgia and early trauma correlation? Could Pokemon have been a self-coping mechanism as children, vice versa? Sure, it absolutely could be. I think that Pokemon, could be something that's very soothing and comforting, and it's cute and fun characters in a fun world filled with friendship and connection, and it was a way for a lot of us to socialize and be part of communities when we were kids. I think that whether or not you're going through trauma, I think you can still have that nostalgia and connections to these things. For me, I did not have a traumatic early childhood when I was into Pokemon. I had some trauma-ish things happen to me a little bit later, but not really when I was collecting Pokemon, and I still love it and feel nostalgic connection to it. So I don't think it's necessary by any means. But I think in general, collecting and going back to the things that you did in childhood is very comforting. Ancient Muse says, what am I drinking? Just drinking tea. My girlfriend made me some tea for the stream. Kevin Clear says, are you trying to get beard game on point? No, I've actually been a little bit disorganized this week. I've been staying at my mom's a little bit she's out of town. I've been taking care of her cats. So I've been sort of I didn't bring my razor over, stuff like that. So I just haven't had a chance to shave. But I'm planning on probably shaving tomorrow. I like actually growing a beard, but it gets it just gets, my skin gets irritated and it doesn't feel good. But the main reason I like growing a beard is shaving's annoying. And it's be nice to just have a beard and not, of course you have to trim it, I guess, or just, full mountain man look. Someone in the Patreon Discord shared an old photo of me from the pandemic when I just had crazy hair and full beard, fairly full beard. It was funny to see. I looked ridiculous. Ancient Muse says, how do we hire you for therapy? We do not. So I have had a couple people reach out to me about that over the course of my time here. And what I've always said is that I'm not interested. I don't think it's ethical. I don't think it makes me very uncomfortable to kind of merge that. I'm happy to be anyone's friend or to talk to you as a peer, but I'm not going to take on the responsibility of being anyone's therapist in this space, which is a very different thing than just being a peer who's well-intentioned and well-meaning and wants the best for you. And what I've just said to people who've reached out to me is just that to go seek a professional sort of in their community, and to look online and that sort of thing. So it's just not something that I would ever feel comfortable having anywhere near. It's part of why I didn't talk about what I did for a while and wasn't sure I was going to, but I'm just a very um, it's hard for me to not talk about something like that when I do 3 hour, like all these, like tens of thousands of hours of talking, and to just not say that whole time what I did outside for a living just felt too weird. So and it helps you guys get a better sense of like who I am and where I'm coming from, and I think that's good. Um, so there's a big thing in therapy, which is a concept of dual relationships, and it's very unethical to have a dual relationship with your therapist, where you have a relationship with them in one area of your life, and then they're also trying to be your therapist. Um, so, for those who don't know that much about therapy, or just are interested in sort of what it's like being a therapist. Not a bot says, "What are your top five waifu cards?" Oh boy, I'm not a huge waifu fan. I couldn't even name you like which ones I like the best. I sorry. I mean, I guess I like the Lily from Ultra Prism and the Lily from Sun and Moon Base, because I just remember opening those cards and having like a good experience when I came back into the hobby as an adult. Within the first kind of year or so that I was back in the hobby, year and a half or so, I opened some of those sets and was kind of chasing after those cards. So I'll say this. Adam Sislo says, "Have you graded with CGC, and what are your thoughts on them and their place in the market now that they have been around for a little bit?" I have not graded with CGC. I, a lot of people ask me, should I be grading with CGC? What should I do? And my answer was always, as a collector, do whatever you like the best. If you prefer the CGC case, I think, go with that. From a financial price point, I always sort of said things like, it's pretty risky unless you're looking to kind of sell immediately. Generally speaking, I would just sort of wait for all this craziness. I'm someone who I don't like the gamble. It's not worth it to me to gamble on a grading company to see what grades they're going to give me, and then what I'm going to be able to sell them for when I have no idea. I would much rather be patient and do something that I really feel confident will work and is sort of in my wheelhouse that I can control. But part of the luxury of that, again, is that I'm not a Pokemon business, so I don't have to constantly churn. If I had to constantly churn during the last year, I would have been definitely grading with CGC, because that was your only option, really, at any sort of reasonable price point, or to get your card back in any sort of reasonable time that you can actually flip it. So you really didn't have any options. You could either hold the card and keep that capital tied up, or grade with CGC. In some cases, people probably did just about the same as they would have done if they, could grade it with PSA. In other cases, maybe if you got a, pristine 10 or something, you could have done even better. But there were lots and lots of cases, people getting 9.5s, 8.5s. I picked up a lot of 8.5s and 9.5s this year. A lot of really strong looking cards that I may cross grade in the future. But again, super patient, not in a rush. May cross grade some of the stronger ones. But I was buying some cards at 8.5s that I think are pretty solid 9s at 50% of PSA, and some even lower, 30% of PSA sometimes, and I like that. That even just as a collector, that's just really good value for me. And I just don't care that much about the 8.5 grade. I care more about just the quality of the card. It's a little bit more of that buy the card, not the grade. I buy the card and the grade, because the grade is going to give you some guidance generally on how what type of condition the card is in, but it's important to look at the card generally, and particularly for your higher value things. I think your lower value, it really doesn't matter as much. I don't think people are going to be as caring as much, but I think when you really get on the higher end, a strong 10 versus a weak 10, strong 9 versus a weak 9, And then I think eye appeal is really important. A really good looking card, particularly on the high end, is going to really matter over time. People. I know there's a lot of stonkage and people trying to make money, but like in the long run, people are going to want to own these things because they really like them and they can afford them and they want to keep them. And when you really want to keep something and you never want to sell it or flip it, what you care most about is, do you like it? Does it make you happy? Does having it in that grade, in that type of case, does it make you enjoy that item more? And I would really push people to reflect on that for themselves. I'm sure there are people collecting graded cards right now who don't really enjoy graded cards, and they got into it maybe more for that financial, for that money. And then I think there are other people like me who really enjoy graded cards. It's such a fun part of the hobby. It just adds so many dimensions and enjoyment for me and chase and excitement. And being able to reflect on that, I really do believe in the long run, if this hobby is going to be successful, which I believe it will, and continue to sort of grow and flourish over time with definite ups and downs. People really, really need to love these things and really want these things, and are not buying them to stonk. They're buying them because it makes them happy to own a cool piece of history, of history of their lives, of the history of Pokemon, history of the largest pop culture, franchise in the world. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. That's what collecting's all about. Do it for yourself, not for other people. Seth Dudley says, does online hate or drama ever create stress in your real life? Definitely. Something I reflect on is sort of if something is good for me versus that I think it's good for the audience, or versus that I think it's good for the overall community. Because I think sometimes I want to vent and it might feel good for me in the moment, but it's not what's best for my audience, and it's not what is best for the community. And I try to kind of vent to my girlfriend, or vent somewhere else, or vent privately to like my friends. There are other times where I don't want to, I'm tired, I don't feel like having a conversation where I know people are going to come at me and say, you're a scammer and you're a terrible person and all these things. It's very draining, I will tell you, to have people who have never met you just kind of deeply question your integrity and throw stuff out. It's a very weird experience, particularly, I guess, for me, who just never existed online, and it took some getting used to, and I'm still trying to figure out how best, kind of who to respond to and who to at this point just block. And there are some people that I have blocked now because I just don't like I don't find their tone and their takes kind, or helpful. I'm someone who's very open and enjoys discussion and debate, and I like bringing people on who are opinionated and are going to share different opinions. But a rule for me is, if it feels like the opinions are starting to become more important than the way you treat each other, that's a good sign to stop. And if one person is sort of unable to stop or unwilling to stop, then ending that relationship. I'm not a believer in ending relationships or anything that extreme, but just sort of like maybe taking a break from that interaction, not engaging with that person as much, kind of letting go. And there have been a number of comments or something left on my video that I should not have responded to. I should have just left them there, and instead I tried to debate it or kind of get into a conversation. And those were some mistakes, but very mild mistakes. Not something that I dwell over. More stuff that I learned from. And learning. Like when I feel real anger, irritation, I learn stuff about myself. Like I learn how I respond to criticism, how I respond to like random criticism from people I haven't met, responding to criticism from people I have met in the PokeTuber space, or whatever. Part of being online is and sharing opinions is that, you have so many people, there's so many people, thousands of people who watch this and create opinions of me and opinions of what I'm saying, and that within that you're going to get a range of opinions, and within that you're going to get a range of how people respond, right? Because there's a lot of people who are going to have, maybe somewhat of a negative opinion, but they're not going to feel like telling me, or generally the people who leave the negative comments, like they hate, like they're angry at me. They want me to feel bad. They want to make themselves feel better. There's something going on there. Or they feel like they're standing up for the hobby. They feel like I'm bad for the hobby, or they feel like they're standing up for another content creator. Those people I'm much more empathetic towards, or I'm much more I even encouraging of. I think that I disagree maybe with them, but I think it's nice that they're supporting another content creator, whatever. But I would encourage people to debate, but to be kind, and let's see if I have anything else to say on that, Seth. Overall, it has not impacted me in any sort of significant negative way. Like and I feel like I've overall enjoyed my online experience. I've made a lot of friends. I've learned a lot of new skills. I've been able to try to build something. Like I'm able to create. Like it's very creative and fun to sort of build my own business or my own thing, my own channel, my own whatever in this space. And it's just been very, very rewarding, and it's worth those things. It's worth those interactions to kind of continue that. The positive interactions and the people, saying kind things to me is always greatly appreciated. It's super nice. But it doesn't make the really negative ones not sting. And but the thing I enjoy most is not sort of that. It's really just the doing the work, having the conversations, meeting with people, bringing people on the channel, being able to talk about things that we all enjoy. So, and I think overall, I've tried to be careful, even though I've tried to, I think that there are certain things that I've called out on this hobby that I probably didn't need to call out, or didn't need to call out in the way that I called out probably. And, but it's tough to figure those things out. And there's certain beefs, or there's certain people out there probably who have feelings about me that I wish didn't, have those negative feelings about me. It sucks to know that I run into a person at a CollectorCon, and instead of someone being excited, oh, hey, what's up, man? It's great to meet you, and let's have a conversation. The idea that there are going to be people out there who oh, can't stand that guy, But it's important to get used to that, and to understand it, and even respect it, or accept it, and sort of respect other people's, respect that other people can understandably not like you, and even if you think that they're misunderstanding you in some way, or coming from a different perspective, or being unfair, respect that people are going to have their own opinions, and even opinions that you really don't like. But it's definitely it's a work in progress, with all that stuff. But I do think it's ultimately good for you, good for growth, self-growth, I mean. Kevin Clear says, and I know a lot of people here in the chat, have done online things, and people who share their online opinions even here. I mean, I'm sure people here fight in the comment section sometime, or get into debates, and everyone understands that it can feel crappy. Kevin Clear says, would you give around one of those Pikachu? Oh. Would you drive around one of those Pikachu Beetles? I have not seen those. There are Pikachu Beetle cars out there. Sure, that would be fun. I don't know what those are. Squeaks in the chat. How you doing, man? Good to see you. Do you ever worry the metal ridges on those shelves will warp the boxes versus a flat surface? Maybe we should talk about that more if you've had experience. You can let me know if you've ever, because I have not kept things on shelves for years and years. I used to have a lot of this stuff in storage containers that I then kept on the shelf, but now it's kind of, I've displaying them. So let me know if that's a thing I should look out for. You would know better than me. We could talk offline. Basic Trainer says, the number one reason why Jake is on my Mount Rushmore of PokeTubers is the philosophy talk on top of it all. I appreciate that, Basic. Appreciate the kind words. Retrograde, it says, what really grinds your gears? Toxic, what really grinds my gears? I think really strong opinions that I don't feel are based in fact, but are rather based in someone's ego, or someone trying to win an argument, or someone trying to get some sort of personal gain. That's something that grinds my gears. That's something that's hard. It's hard for me to, like, I get it pisses me off. So, but I'm a much happier person when I'm not angry, and when I'm more empathetic and olive branches and all that type of stuff. And so I really want to not, like, I really want to be friends with people and get along with people and as much as possible going forward. And maybe let more differences, just let it be. I know that people like drama, and some people like, and then some people hate, which is how drama works. But like when I get really upset, or I get really into something, or I criticize something, but it's just not what I think is best for this channel or for anyone, ultimately. I think it's important to have those debates, and part of that debate is sort of being critical of ideas, thinking critically of ideas, but it's something that, it's a personal growth thing for me to work on, and I've got plenty of room left to grow. Are those ETBs behind you Crimson Invasion, Sun and Moon, or Evolutions? I think I have some of a bunch of different things. I think I have all of that somewhere. Yeah. I don't have any Evolutions ETBs. I have one Evolutions box, booster box, but no ETBs. My one PC, my one private collection Evolutions booster box. The ETBs that I have multiple ones of are the ones that I feel like I got at a really good value, and I'm either planning to open, or, I tend to try to buy them, a number of them, and I have a number in boxes and sealed well, and also in storage. They're generally of sets. I said in my last live, my biggest regret is not buying a bunch of the some of those really early rare ETBs, but it is what it is now. I probably, there's a good chance I'll never own them because they're so expensive. Kevin Clear says, have you ever bought out a Walmart? Never. Definitely never. The most things I've ever bought is like one ETB. I am not someone who goes and tries to buy a lot of things. I've never done that, ever. I never plan on it. I view that as like just a place to go pick something up. And honestly, I've never even gone out to like intentionally to buy Pokemon. The only times I've ever bought Pokemon at a Walmart or a Target, which I have on a few occasions, is because I was like already there and I was like, oh, that'll be fun to open, and they just happen to have some. Now, whenever I go to Walmart or Target, I do look to see if there's anything there, and if there is, I would pick up one, and if I could get it for cheaper than eBay or something, just to open probably. Legend of Luke says, would love to hear your thoughts on PSA versus BGS. I hear people say that you're dumb not to grade with PSA, but to me, BGS seems to be equally reputable. My biggest hang-up with PSA is I don't like their slabs/labels, and I want to actually enjoy looking at my card while it's still in my collection, so I lean more towards BGS personally. So it's definitely going to be on a card-by-card basis, and it also has to do with, like, what do you think your card's going to grade? And that's a really hard thing to know. But there's some, when you grade a lot, you might get a sense of like, this has a decent chance. This isn't going to get a 10, but it has a decent chance at a 9.5. And believe it or not, like a BGS 9.5 will sell better than a PSA 9, which that card might get. So that could be a financial reason to actually grade with BGS. It's a classic question of, I have collector preferences, but my collector preferences are not necessarily what's going to get me the most value. And I think that that's just a personal, that's a personal calculation inside. I care a lot about collecting. I mean, ultimately, this is all about collecting for me. But in order to collect the biggest collection, I have to be smart financially. I would never buy anything, though, that I didn't like for any reason. Like, even if I could flip it, it's just not if I could flip it for an insane, I mean, if something came up that was worth $1,000 and I could buy it for $30 or $50 because there was some sort of ridiculous auction, of course I would buy that and flip that. But, if that was selling for $600 or $500, I honestly, it's just not something I do. And that might sound weird to people, but everyone has their sort of way of doing things. I really try to focus in on the stuff that I enjoy. It's part of how I have always loved this hobby, and I think been able to just not get burned out at all. Like I really still enjoy collecting, and it's because I just focus on the things I like and that make me happy. So unfortunately I can't answer that for you. I will say that BGS is definitely reputable. It's not an issue of being reputable. Generally speaking, they have a bit of a BGS 9s definitely do sell, for the most part, less than PSA 9s. And I would say overall, I probably see some weaker, particularly in the subgrades. If you have like a few 8.5s, I have seen some pretty weak BGS 9s. Of course, I've seen some pretty weak PSA 9s out there too, but generally speaking, I feel more comfortable with a PSA 9 than a BGS 9. But buy the card and not the grade, and buy the card and the grade. So you got to look at these cards, and I buy BGS, I buy CGC, I buy PSA, I even buy other grading companies if the card looks really good to me, and I can get it at a really good value. In fact, sometimes I look for those, and take a little bit of a gamble that I'm not missing some sort of damage. Thrifty TCG says, looks like Sun and Moon base. Yeah, so there's some Sun and Moon base. These orange ones, up there are Sun and Moon base, and we've got a row of Brilliant Stars. Retrograde says that he's getting okay with CGC subs. They have more heft and so look clean. Plus, they give out 10s like candy now. Boost TZ says, most people don't have the discipline for holding long-term, let alone during times of heavy losses. You're already at a huge advantage if you hold long-term. Yeah, it depends on how the market does, right? Like, if you believe in something, then it's good to hold it and to not be swayed by interim fear and panic. Markets are very emotional, and you want to try to not be emotional. You want to try to kind of put those emotions aside and take more of a objective stance. Now, there is definitely there's still an element, I think, of channels and of individuals who are a lot more bullish than I am, a lot more certain that Pokemon is definitely going to continue strong and go up. I don't understand where they're getting that certainty from. I don't think anyone could be certain of something like that. So that sort of mindset feels not understanding the real risks in buying and putting money in pop culture collectibles, which are, are not necessary goods and don't need to go up in value. Then the Pokemon company doesn't care if they go up in value. There's no company, it's all up to us on the secondary market and what we all think. Versus owning, multinational company. But I'm very hopeful for the future, and I think I have a moderate opinion, but everyone does, right? Everyone thinks they're, not everyone, but most people hopefully think they're being objective. So, and everyone's entitled to their opinions, and I'm entitled to mine. Swami says, all other aspects besides CGC cases are the clearest, in my opinion, for viewing the cards. Balance says, Jake, what is the most left field collectible that you have? Like left field from cards? I mean, I collect some signed, like, sports memorabilia, but not very much, just like a little bit. I don't, like, have anything that's, like, super non-mainstream, though, as far as collectibles that I can think of, yeah. It's mainly cards, for sure. Grandpa Joe says, should slabs with provinces like special breaks, collect con, etc. demand a premium? Say a PokeTuber like Island Grown who's getting CGC to add his break provenance to his slabs. It could have a premium. It could lower the value if people really don't want a slab with that provenance. It's entire, I hope you don't take this answer as a cop-out, Grandpa Joe, but it's the truth. It's entirely up to the market, and if I had to judge it or guess or make a guess, I would say something common sense like the bigger and more popular and broadly loved that celebrity is, the more, and the bigger the event is, more historic the event is, the more likely that provenance is going to hold value. For example, the first Logan Paul booster box opening, no matter how you feel about Logan Paul as a person, I think there's a lot of positive sentiment, and that was kind of a pretty historical moment for the hobby in terms of the huge boom, and so I think owning something with that provenance, even if you can't stand Logan Paul, I could understand how it would be cool to have an item from that event as sort of a historical important event because of how many people were watching and how many new people came into the hobby. That sort of thing would have way more of a provenance than something that would feel a little bit maybe smaller and more random. But it's up to the individual, right? There might be, you use Island Grown as an example here. If you have someone who's a really big fan of Island Grown and has been watching his channel and appreciating his channel for a long time, and him as a content creator and influencer, they might love that and pay a premium. And if you have enough people, like if he only does it a few times and there are only a few out there, people could pay a large premium for that. Oop, just jumped to the bottom. Sorry, I know we have a ton of questions, and I'm taking my time here, but just trying to find where we were. Kevin Clear says, is it possible there's a Charizard sketch card still hiding in the My Little Pony cards? I have no idea. Jamie Scott says, do you think that collecting and hobbies are just vices to delay our knowledge that we are going to die, so we fill our time with meaningless obsessions and wastes of time? I think that it's understandable to take a sort of nihilistic view to life and just be like, well, everything is just a waste of time, including our significant others and our kids and our parents, and I think it's also very reasonable to say that these relationships and these experiences are very significant to you, are very significant to me, are very significant to human beings, and that is part of the natural world and the natural order and the way that human beings are and the way society is, and whether if that's from God or some sort of designed plan or just sort of the reality that we're living in and some sort of unexplained phenomenon, I do not know the answer to that, but I think it's reasonable to have a lot of different frameworks and ideas about things and lenses and ways of looking at things. It's not, that's not a lens that I feel is particularly relevant to my day-to-day life, but it's something that I understand. It's also something that generally speaking, it's a way that someone's going to feel when they're feeling depressed or down. And often depression and down can actually be can be very physiological and less existential. And if you have a bite to eat, spend some time with someone who interests you and makes you laugh, exercise, go outside, you might find that although that you intellectually or rationally you understand that way of thinking, it doesn't resonate with you emotionally. Oh man, my chat is just freaking out tonight, guys. I don't know what's happening here. Spend some time. Let's see, can I get back to where we were? Do we miss a bunch of comments now? Because this chat, I don't know if people are just writing a ton tonight or my chat's just freaking out. Shit, I might have missed some questions and different things because now it's not going. Let's see. How do I go back up? Is there a way to go back up? Fellow PokeTubers, or just people who have knowledge? Or does eventually you can only see back to a certain point? Well, I apologize for those questions you missed. If I missed your question or your comment after I start this next one, please feel free to add it. So the one I have at the top now is Skater Nesto asking, question, hey Jake, as a speculator, what do you think will perform better? A set of all 3 Pikachu medals, first, second, or third? Or 3 of just the gold medals in PSA 10? I think 3 of just the gold medals in PSA 10. Retrograde says, I worked for over a decade. It's rare that I can give such a straightforward answer. That's definitely my feeling. Retrograde says, I worked for over a decade as a partisan on Capitol Hill. Let me tell you, they're all massively stupid. People that work for them are incredibly smart, though. That makes sense to me on a certain level. I don't know, just that I think often the people who, let's not go into that too much, but, in my mind, I think of something like when you think about the path to getting elected versus the path to getting, to sort of being on that staff and being hired, oftentimes, and this might be an unfortunate thing, but I think that people who are elected for something, although this just gets into a whole really difficult conversation about democracy. I'm gonna pass. It's too complicated and difficult for this Pokemon channel. Maybe one day when I do if I do, I'm thinking about maybe doing a podcast or something with my girlfriend on politics and economics and all sorts of other areas, and maybe interviewing people and doing something additionally to this on a different channel, but. We can have those types of really interesting but, complicated, difficult debates and conversations. Matt says, what's the last board game you played? I have not played a board game in a little bit. The last one I played was Wingspan a couple weeks ago. Pac-Man says, Pokenomics, let's play one-on-one for some content. If you come to like Charlotte or like Denver and we have a hoop around there and you bring a ball, I'm down to play anyone. It'd be fun. Little Pokemon basketball game. The Real Typhlosion says, who's your favorite DBZ character? I have to go Vegeta at the end of the day. Vegeta or Future Trunks. Yeah. Jamie Scott asking the philosophical questions. Do I think that consciousness is a computation? It would depend on how we're defining all of this stuff. And so for those who don't know, I was in college, I did a double major for all intensive purposes in psychology and philosophy. And my concentration was in something called philosophical and scientific studies of the human mind with a concentration in moral psychology. It's quite a mouthful. And we talked a lot about consciousness and these types, and morality and these types of questions. And I think I'm gonna pass on that one just because it's concept of a person and consciousness, and it's a pretty long discussion. But I really appreciate you throwing out these interesting questions. Sean McLaughlin says, "Are Dean, Chloe, and Frank dropping you another visit since they're in the U.S.?" Nope, no plans on seeing them in person. Although it would be fun to hang out with some of the UK people in person one day if they're watching this, they're ever in Boston or in the Boston area. Definitely hit me up and it'd be fun having you over and talking Pokemon, doing some sort of collaboration. I'm always up for things like that. Kevin Clear says, "How often do you use coupons?" Pretty rarely, if I'm being honest. maybe a couple times a year, I want to say. Generally, it's more like I just like happen to be sent one in the mail, or I just like happen to see one and then I like use it. Retrograde says, "I like that Jake seems to be going faster than his 2 questions per hour average. I might be wrong." You're probably wrong. I'm probably going really slow. Pikachu says, "Jake, when is the rarest card you've had a chance to purchase, but for some reason it got away?" So I was the second highest bidder on a Tropical Breeze English card, a PSA 8 that came up on auction on eBay maybe 4 years ago now. That's when I remember that got away. I appreciate the tough questions. This one I'm gonna skip, Jamie, because it's a little bit graphic. um, Poke Knowledge says we should have a 1 or 2 minute clock to see how many questions can be answered. I think it'd be funny to bring like a Mason on once, and he can like force me to like only have a minute, and then it's just like next, move on to the next one, and maybe he and I can do that for each other once. Might be funny. Pokemon Breeder is asking about Leangelo Ball. My understanding of Leangelo Ball is that my last knowledge of this was that he there was not that much interest, but maybe he's improving. And I remember for a time there wasn't that much interest in LaMelo Ball, or people were doubting LaMelo Ball, and now so it's interesting how the trajectory of people can really shift in a few years if they're really working out or improving their game or getting taller or whatever, some combination. Favorite beer? I mean, the beer that I like, the common beer that I mostly drink is Blue Moon. I like IPAs generally also. Um, Blue Moon and Gingling I've been drinking since high school. You know, um, so I feel a connection to those. The old card trip says, "When will Pokenomics have an NFT for me to purchase?" Any day now. Just gotta get. I just gotta get this. I just gotta get the right developer so that, and the right influencers on the project, much bigger influencers than me, so that And then I can have the developer write in the code something like that that the people who like bought in first or that are able to sell immediately, like right as it goes live, and then we'll all just rug pull the coin and make a bunch of money. That's the strategy, right, on NFTs these days. Hey, yeah, just no interest at all at this moment. Maybe in the future. Not in me creating an NFT, but just like NFTs in general. It's just not. It's not even on my radar anymore at this point, and it's a shame that just some just awful people, so scummy, just wanting to make money, like just filled that space up. um, does pineapple belong on pizza? The real Typhlosion. Not for me. Chris N says, When do you feel PSA will drop grading to $20? I'm thinking no earlier than 2023. If I had to guess, I would say in the next 3 to 6 months, you're gonna see like $25 to $20 pricing from PSA. If I had to guess, 3 to 6 months. But that's pure speculation. Pretty much. I mean, I hear little things here and there, but and I know Dan talked to someone specifically who said something very specific at a convention at one point, but I don't know. Also, like, that information could have been good, but now PSA needs to change their timetable, like, and might, what was true then or what they were hoping to do may not actually happen. There's a ton of things. Until it actually happens, it hasn't happened, and no one, speculating on exactly when is going to matter. you know. Let's see. So Pikachu say, does anyone else notice how much more organized Jake's setup is looking? Just wait. I have some plans for maybe sprucing it up a little more in the future as I'm taking YouTube and content creation and all this stuff more seriously, a little bit at a time. Takes me a while, but my goal is to always kind of make, steady improvements over time on what I'm doing and what I do. So it's Darren NV says, recently switched my investment strategy to PSA 10s for modern and Japanese promos and 9 to 10 for vintage, obviously dependent on price. Is that a better investment than sealed? I would not say so. I would not say anything definitively. I definitely would never come out and say I think vintage, like I think graded is going to do better in the long run than sealed, or sealed is going to do better in the long run than graded. I don't know the answer to that. I think it's ideally about the best thing about price point. Part of what I love so much about graded or ungraded raw is even the best is that you can make so much more by buying it in large lots or auctions, and by grading it yourself and then making that premium on that. There's just a lot. I never could have made the money that I made if I had just put all my money in sealed product. Even if I had picked the best sealed product of everything, I could not have made near the money that I made by buying raw cards and grading them myself and hitting 10s, and then so. But if you're just gonna buy something and then just put it back, and if you're do I think like if you're paying full price, let's just say theoretically you're paying full price for sealed. Now you can also get sealed sometimes at cheaper rates, or sometimes there are discounted amounts, or or you can buy like a number of sealed products in some sort of large lot and get them at a little bit of a cheaper price. It happens. It's just much, much rarer in my experience, to find auctions of a lot of sealed product going for a lot less. That is one plus of sealed product, is that sealed product is easier to sell at full price. You can even throw it up in auctions and it will generally sell at full price, whereas raw or ungraded, if you lot that up and throw it in an auction, it could do real poorly. It's often why being more patient with that stuff, putting in best offer, buy it now, is usually the way to go, unless you really need to liquidate, or at least putting it in to consignment service or some sort, or to have a big eBay store where you're going to get eyes on it. But as you kind of alluded to here, it's mostly what I do. As you can see, I buy everything, and it's mostly dependent on price. And oftentimes I find, I would say 70 to 80% of the time, I find the better deals, and I buy mostly graded or ungraded. And I deal mostly in that. I mostly think that that's undervalued, but 20 to 30% of the time I'm buying sealed, I would say, because I think that the sealed is actually the best value I can get, particularly when I'm buying things right after they get reprints, and I'm buying, a couple cases, and someone's giving me an even better deal, and I'm getting things at, super, super low prices. That is attractive, and I also think it's good diversification, because at the end of the day, nobody really knows. I do think the whole modern versus vintage debate and the sealed versus unsealed debate is is often pretty stupid and way overblown, and there are things in all areas of the hobby that have done better things in all other areas of the hobby. So there's sealed product that's done better than plenty of unsealed product, and there's plenty of unsealed product that's done better than the vast majority of sealed product, and vice versa. So it's just not. And there's modern stuff that's done really well, and then there's vintage stuff that's done a lot better than modern. It's just and maybe I'll do a video. I keep a lot. A few months ago I did a private video on kind of going over how everything did during the boom, and sort of if you had bought this set or this set sort of in each individual card, kind of like what percentage would you have made. And so I can tell you firsthand, having just dug into all of that myself, there's a wide variety, and there are plenty of vintage cards that way outperformed, plenty of modern cards, and plenty of modern cards that way outperformed plenty of vintage cards. Okay, it's a myth. Anyone who's coming out and definitively trying to say one thing is more popular, or now the other maybe more interesting question is what's going to happen in the future. I think it's good for us all to be with the data of what actually happened, but I think it's another thing to and you can cherry pick data. I've seen plenty of videos who might, and to say cherry picking is not fair because I'm implying that they're intentionally just choosing things, but I could show you data that would refute sort of the data that you showed if I showed these other 2 data points from different sets that you didn't happen to choose or compare to. Yeah. So we're not gonna do that in this video, but hopefully people can sort of take my word for it in the future. I could maybe shoot a video and show some examples if people really don't believe that. Let's see. James Bissell said, and the last thing I'll say on that is it would be really nice if we all sort of tried to hold ourselves and each other accountable in the sense of really talking about what we know and what we understand, and being and not creating straw men, and I think that a lot of the gatekeeping that's happened in this hobby has been around creating this sort of boogeyman straw man when in reality and oftentimes that boogeyman and strawman doesn't really exist. I don't really think there are probably too many PokeTubers out there who think 100% guaranteed, if they're being really honest, like I am 100% sure that Pokemon and that investing in this is the best possible thing you could do with money. And if they are, I would call those people delusional. And I know that that's pretty blunt, but I would say it is delusional to be 100% sure. Now, to be 80% sure, 90% sure, and think it's a really good risk, I'm all for it. Similarly, people out there who like I'm 100% it's all doomed, or the only thing you can invest in is vintage, and that's the only thing that can make you money, and buying sealed product is for idiots and fools. Like I don't think that like real established people in the hobby who've been here a long time really believe that. Like that's not, the vast majority of us have a much more sort of like nuanced take on those types of things, and are, I think, a lot more respectful and also humble in what we know and what we don't know. So it's sort of that I would never make a claim that of something that I felt like I didn't know definitively, right? That's very different than giving your opinions and trying to put a percentage based on likelihood. So we should all just be respectful and not gatekeep. That goes for everyone, no matter which side of what debate you're on. That's a good message for every single one of us, including myself. Let's see here. Just want to make sure I'm not missing any questions here. Coulter says, holy cow, I actually get to listen to this one live. I'm so happy that you're here with us. Welcome. People starting to post more Dragon Ball trophies, Pikachu says. It's interesting. Can we get Swolpoke on the channel? I could reach out to him. I don't know him at all. We have never spoken, even though we have, mutual friends. And I don't know if he knows who I am. But I do know who he is, through Radar and others. And yeah, maybe I'll reach out to him. I haven't thought about that, actually. By your suggestion, Pikachu, I am going to bring David Person back on the channel at some point. He and I have never been... Rafi actually did the interview back then, but it should be a fun conversation at some point. And then we got Squeaks and Radar coming up, and, some other fun guests over time. And then I've got some other plans for some new types of content, which I'm hoping to do in the next few months. So stay tuned. Jamie Scott says, do you think it's weird that a majority of people in the Pokemon community are adults? In what's generally defined and marketed as a game for kids, there's little to no content made for adults. I'm not sure if you meant to say, do I think it's weird the majority... So, I don't know if the majority of people into Pokemon are adults or not. The one thing I would say about that is that, we grew up with Pokemon, my generation, and, the 20-year-olds and the people, 10 to 15. So, there's a lot of people who this game and franchise is near and dear to their heart, to their lived experience, what have you. And I definitely don't think it's weird to enjoy something that you enjoyed as a kid, as an adult, particularly something like this that's such a rich, kind of broad scoping thing with video games and movies. I do think, though, that to your point about it not being marketed for adults as much, I do think that's something that I wonder if Pokemon's going to do a little bit more in the future, now that my generation has really rediscovered, in a bigger way, sort of their love and enjoyment for Pokemon. I I do think that there might be some more content and some more cards and some more things that might be geared towards adults and adult collectors, and I think that would be a really really good thing for the hobby. It's just about balancing that, with also having, lots of sets and items and things that are going to appeal to all ages. And there's zero wrong with having things that are going to be enjoyable for the family. I mean, to have stuff that like everyone in the family from every generation can connect to and enjoy is only a positive thing. Um, so uh, Angela Patricia says, "Hi Jake, what do you think about XY promos? I just started collecting and I really like the art style of the X and Y promo full art cards, especially Gen 1 starter and Pika. Are they in a good buy price right now?" Um, I don't know the prices offhand of those specific cards. I have been looking quite a bit at that era, I will be honest. So I think that there are definitely good buys in the XY era, even and into the Sun and Moon era. And I think that I definitely have no idea if they'll go up over time, but as a collector, I think that there's some good value in certain things, and I think if the market does well over time, those items will likely, appreciate, and I think are probably less likely to have big corrections than maybe some ultra modern stuff might, just given the fact that it's ultra modern is probably at its most popular right now, and it's still getting reprints and more is still going to come out. Um, that being said, do not like without you get like if you came to me and you were like, and would you buy this card at $200? I could give you a specific answer and I could say, yes, I see value there. No, I don't. But that wouldn't be like investment advice. That's just like would I buy it as a collector speculator. And I haven't bought any of those specific cards right this second, so I haven't seen them come up on market for a price that I would have bought, or I'd be buying them those specifically. But I am looking at that era generally. That's the best I can kind of do on that. Retrograded says, "I definitely think it's weird that adults are into Pokemon, but then I look at sports and being obsessed with another dude's mini poster after middle school seems weird, and I sleep well." Yeah, I mean, it depends how we define weird. I mean, being very into anything is weird because there's so many possible things to be into that if you're super into something, it's likely that like there's going to be some sort of niche community built around that, but not there's so many other niche communities, built around other things. Now, because Pokemon is so popular, our niche community is going to be quite a bit bigger than, and this was used as an example on my channel at one point, but like I think Charlie brought this up, but like the wooden mallard, collector community is going to be a lot less people in it because part of pop culture collectibles is that, and something being pop culture is that it's popular culture. It was very popular. It was introduced to lots of people, and when that happens, a lot more people are gonna be into it. And if we define weird as unusual or abnormal or something that most people aren't going to be into, first of all, being like a intense collector is weird or is not the normal, although it's normal in the sense that lots of people, it's not the majority. But weird is different than bad. Or unusual is different than bad, and I think asking, is it bad, or is it bad for you, or sometimes I feel like people are like really asking, like, should I be embarrassed about this? Should I be ashamed of these types of things? And, that's a personal journey, and experience, but, uh, I don't feel those feelings. I think there's probably been a couple of times where, my girlfriend has like introduced me and said to brand new strangers and said that I, am into this and doing this, and I've been a little bit like, oh, I wonder what they're gonna, think of that, and is that gonna, what kind of impressions are they gonna have of me? Are they gonna be negative impressions, like that sort of thing? Um, I wouldn't feel that way if she was introducing me as something that's like more uniformly positive. Like he just got his doctorate or something, or this or that, and but that stuff really doesn't matter very much. What matters more, are you enjoying what you're doing on a day-to-day basis? Is what you're doing good for you? Does it make you happy? That sort of stuff. Pokemon Breeder Max says, how is it weird? I'm 26 and Pokemon just keeps coming back to me. It's just one of those franchises that has been constantly fun and enjoyable, particularly the games and most recently the cards. Jamie Scott says, people have false realities in their views of others, often placing expectations, projecting values or behaviors onto them, and then being upset when they don't live up to them. For sure. That's for sure true. And it's normal to some extent. Kima says, what do you think about the Blastoise and Venusaur CD promos versus the VHS promos? Do you think one is undervalued compared to the other? Ooh. Interesting question. I'm sorry, I just don't have a strong opinion one way or another. They're not cards that I have speculated heavy in. They're not cards that to be completely honest with you, that I have followed very closely in terms of the price trajectory. It just goes to show that, I try to sort of be up on most things, but there's just endless amounts of stuff, and those are just one area that one could be a great deal right now, and I'm just not aware. Maybe after this I'll go look, but yeah. Good niche question though. I like those types of questions. Unfortunately, I just don't have an opinion on it one way or another. Charvy, what are your thoughts on the Aquapla Slowking being the best artwork in the hobby? It's pretty good artwork. I like Slowking too. I'm a fellow Slowking enthusiast, Charvy. Retrograded says, oh, I totally did not mean to come off as negative. I assume by my weird agreement, this hobby is pure and amazing. You didn't at all to me, but I understand that, it can be a touchy thing, and, shaming each other or shaming ourselves over being in this hobby or enjoying what you enjoy, it's not, it's understandable to feel those feelings, but it's also good to come back to the fact that, like, it's really fun, and maybe focus more on sort of how to continue to make it fun and what types of communities and people, and then of course having balance. I think that it can be easy to just, if you rely too much on anything or you get too into anything, it's probably not going to be that fun, and it can get overwhelming and frustrating. So for me, like, having other relationships and friends that have nothing to do with Pokemon, playing basketball, music, those other things definitely help me enjoy Pokemon more, and kind of feel like I'm excited to do this live. Like, I was excited to come on, in part because I've haven't done Pokemon in 3-4 days, and I'm excited to talk about it and hang out in it and be here, Let's see. Zane says, Jake, do you wish rares were less common in celebrations? It would have made them more valuable. Uh, it would have been cool if they had put in some higher rarity cards, potentially, like some really crazy chase cards. But, there's always positives and negatives to everything. It would be hilarious and would completely shake up the market if they started doing like one of ones or one of tens or some like even just like case hit type things, 1 out of 12 booster box type hits, 1 out of 24 or 100, but or in this case ETBs, but it's not what Pokemon has ever done. And I think overall celebrations hit the mark for what it was supposed to do and what it was supposed to be. But I'm always down for chasing. I love a good chase. And that set doesn't necessarily. I agree with you. It doesn't deliver on chase. There's no card that's really really like impossible to find or impossible to pull. Although clearly the pull rates are kind of interesting, and how hard it is to pull some of the cards versus other cards is kind of interesting. Zane says, how do you feel about celebrations as a collector investor? I'd say a 5 out of 10. Like, I'm not it's good, solid, fine, but it's also not something particularly now that I feel is like the best thing or the best pickup or anything like that. Just my personal opinions. Doesn't mean I'm going to be right or wrong. I think there are positives to it and negatives to it. Positives being it's going to stand out. It's another reprinted set, which is both a positive and a negative. It's positive in the sense that Evolutions did really well, and that it's the only other sort of set that has any sort of similarity to that. It's filled with classic cards, including your base set Charizard reprint and base set Venusaur and Blastoise, as well as like that Gold Star Umbreon, and then it's very unique in terms of it having the identity of it having like key cards, whether being playable or collectible from like each generation. That is going to be potentially unique. I think if that item ever becomes fairly rare at all, it could do really well in that way because of its uniqueness and standoutness. And then it has the negatives of there just being a lot of people investing in it, keeping it sealed, it being a small set that I think people might get bored of opening. A lot of those cards are probably going to be graded, which is going to flood and the singles market can get pretty flooded, and the prices may go down a lot, which may not. I think Evolutions in a lot of ways got really lucky that with PSA shutting down and all these types of things, I don't think the Evolutions booster box prices ever would have skyrocketed if the cards inside didn't really skyrocket too. And the cards inside were only able to skyrocket because there was a huge influx of demand into the hobby, and people weren't actually able to like grade them, so they were all sitting in graded piles. Now that they've all come back from PSA, or not all, just a small percentage probably, or maybe not a small percentage, but a third or a half or whatever, that will be graded in the next year compared to the amount that will probably be graded in the next year or so. That flooding the market. For example, like the Evolutions Charizard. Here's an example of just a modern, singles card that's done really, really badly, right? There were PSA 9 copies that were selling from I even saw one sell for like 2,000, but like really like 1,200 to 1,500, crazy, like at the peak, and now it's $100 card. There were even some recorded sales that said like 2,000 to 3,000. I don't know if I believe those, but. But it's now for someone like me seeing that price and understanding that like I'm sending 50 out. I know people who have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and are going to be sending them to get graded, and the majority are come back nines. I understand how that it's literally like impossible for that card to sustain that value. In order for that card to stay at $1,500 or $2,000 or even $1,000 or even $500. Is going to take a miracle, and the rest of the hobby is going to grow way more. So that card maybe stays at that, and then the rest of the hobby, that like vintage and rare cards, when I need to be careful with vintage, like your actual rare vintage cards, not your commons and uncommons or base set unlimited, but your low pop, high graded, original Nintendo EX era level X's, E series, Neos, that sort of thing. Just in a very different category than that card. And that's simply just understanding, right, supply and demand, and understanding that so much supply is going to come back and so many people are going to be looking to sell it. And where's that demand going to come from? The demand would need to really, really increase from where it was. And it was already so high that it seemed unlikely. Um, so, um, so again, to go back to celebrations, the negative is just going to be the fact that it's a small subset, not that hard to pull the cards. How much is that gonna make it not super fun to open? Like, how long is it gonna take for those cards to go up in value, and then maybe make it exciting to open? And I maybe I'd put it, instead of a 5, might be a little bit low, maybe a 6 or 7. It's good, and a 6 or 7, don't take that as a really bad grade. That's solid. It's not like, oh my god, what, this is like an insanely obvious, amazing opportunity. But it's if Pokemon does well in the long run, if you're getting those, items. UPC is different because UPC was so underprinted and has the gold, the metal cards in it. That really has quite a bit of potential upside and already has seen unbelievable growth. Which would make me a little wary, of purchasing it. Just I don't like buying things. I've seen so much growth in such a short amount of time. But the fundamentals of that are much better than any other celebrations item. But just like a regular ETB or something like that, I think if Pokemon does well over time, that item will do pretty well with the hobby. Jake, do you collect fourth print? What is the best way to find these? Do I collect four? No, I do. Sorry, when I answer so many questions, sometimes my brain gets tired. I don't go out of my way to collect fourth print. Eventually, I might try to complete a full set. I think part of it was, maybe in CGC, because they actually, acknowledge it. PSA does too now, right? Oh my god, I'm forgetting. Shows you how much I have not been collecting these. Oh no, sorry. CGC is now starting to do like the variations and I think not starting, but has been since they opened, doing gray stamps and things like that. But PSA added the. Someone tell me, did they add it or not at the bottom of the chat here? I'm having a brain fart moment. I'm sure someone here knows. Does PSA? I've been collecting these. Ooh, does PSA? Let's see. Does PSA label fourth print now? I think it does, right? Whatever. Either way. Yeah, I'm not super into it. I think it's kind of cool. For me, maybe 20%, 10 to 20% premium type of thing. From me. The arcade says, have you ever felt overwhelmed in Pokemon? There's so many things / sets you want to collect. How do you stay on target when there's so many targets? Just knowing that it's not a race and that you have time. Again, the rarest items, the hardest to find items are the only times that I feel maybe a little bit overwhelmed of like, I really wish I could afford this item right now, and it's just very expensive, but when is it going to come up again? And, I don't really want to spend this money right now, but I may not get a chance to for a while or ever, Those are the only times I ever feel really overwhelmed. And overwhelmed would be strong, but I feel uncomfortable. Otherwise, there's just not a lot of rush. Set cards, mass-produced. Anything in Modern, in terms of set cards, and in terms of even getting things in perfect, great PSA 10s, like, you're gonna have years and years of time, in my opinion. Now, is that a guarantee? Absolutely not. I mean, it's possible that Pokemon just moons again, and people just get so into it, and everyone's just obsessed. But like, the amount of product, the amount of this stuff out there, the amount that can be graded over time, it would be really, I think, pretty crazy to imagine that you wouldn't be able to find these cards in fairly affordable for the foreseeable future. As far as like the amount of options and the amount of different things, to me that's just mostly a positive, and I love learning and exploring and discovering new things. So it's part of why I watched a lot of channels early on, was just to see what people were collecting, what people were buying, and just get introduced to new cool things. Jamie Scott says, people fan over PSA because of the easy 10s. Whatever happened to the federal investigations on PSA and the key owners / people running the business? Lots of shade around PSA. Yeah, I've heard stories, particularly in the sports card community, right? And the a number of different stories I've heard in the sports card community. The most famous being oh no, my brain's starting to get tired, guys. Whew. Sorry, I worked all day, and then I like did more work after my work day, and now I'm doing this, so you'll have to forgive me. The Honus Wagner, there's my brain, being trimmed and then being graded in 8, is a famous one. But there's been accusations that they've been in cahoots with PWCC. I've heard lots of accusations over the years. I just don't know. I don't have any insider information, and if Rattle gets to the bottom of something, I'm certainly interested in what he finds wherever he looks. So we've been going for about 2 hours, which is crazy because I feel like we just started and I've just started answering questions, and there's so many questions left. I apologize. I think I have maybe like 45 more minutes in me. I'm going to do my best to get through more questions. All right. Do you think with Pokemon International buying out Millennium Print Group, we'll now have more control over creating unique Pokemon promos, or is the buyout specifically just for printing set cards? I have no idea. Really interesting idea. I have not heard someone say that yet. Yeah, I mean, it could be something cool where now they have more printing options. Maybe the U.S. gets some actual promos that are rival some of the Japanese ones. I really don't know the answer to that. That's outside of my knowledge. It's be more just kind of speculation. I hope so. Zane says, do we all here know why Charizard has the position it has in the hobby? Is it because of Ash's Charizard, base set Zard, or Pokemon pushing it? I don't know exactly why. I think that when I was a kid on the playground, it was a fire-breathing dragon card with the highest hit points, and it looks sick. And it's one of the starters, and in the game you could choose it and play with it, and it's a fire-breathing dragon. And I think that's probably the key reason. The fact that Ash interacted with it. Ash interacted with a lot of different starters, and not a lot, all different starters, in one way or another in the series, highlighting different ones in different ways over time. But that's probably the main reason, to be completely honest with you. It is interesting and funny how it's just so adopted, but it's a fire-breathing dragon. Zane says, Charizard objectively isn't that special. Yeah, I mean, it's not that special in the sense that, like, a fire-breathing dragon might not seem like that innovative, but I would say, like, fire-breathing dragon's pretty, attractive to most kids, most people, as in terms of getting our attention and being, like, a strong, powerful, cool Pokemon. I think the design is great, but it's completely biased, I have a feeling that I'm going to have to skip a bunch of questions because I'm about to get to the bottom, and then often this chat just like refreshes and screws me over and I miss a bunch, so I apologize if I skip your question. You can ask it at the bottom again if you'd like. Pac-Man says, do you think Pokemon should be transparent with pack odds? Um, yeah, I mean that would be cool. I guess I think that would be a positive. I think even more interesting would be print runs if they were transparent with print runs. Certainly pack odds, but pack odds we can get a sense of just by, opening a ton of packs. Print runs is the one that would be a real potential game changer. I think for the secondary market. Pokemon Breeder Max says, good question, Park. It's not like the old days or pack rates. Weedle's Warehouse says, when you think about all the chase cards that you personally pulled from sealed product of Sword and Shield era, which ones hit the hardest? So I have not opened a lot of sealed product from Sword and Shield. I'm actually waiting still. On I've opened probably one box of most things. I have not opened any Brilliant Stars yet. I plan on. I basically just keep stuff for a while, and then one day I just had a really good day. I'm in a really good mood, and I just want to celebrate and open something. I might pull it down. I'm also planning on opening stuff when I get together with people like at Collecticon and other places. So my best pull so far. Honestly, I have not had any amazing pulls. I've had, I haven't opened that much product. I've only opened maybe 8 things, and I have not had any significant or major pulls. Honestly, the cards that I kind of liked the most that I pulled, just from pure enjoyment of it, were the amazing rares from Vivid Voltage. Pulling those for the first time and seeing those for the first time, I really appreciated and liked those cards. I think for that, reason, if those cards weren't so easy to pull, they could be a cool subset in the future. But they made the pull rates very low on them, or very high on them. Blake Jen says, "What's your most heartbreaking Pokemon card story?" Oh my gosh, I don't think I have any heartbreaking ones, luckily. Yeah, definitely nothing that I would call heartbreaking. I would say not getting that Tropical Breeze and coming in second was upsetting. I've never damaged a childhood card or lost a childhood card or anything that might actually be heartbreaking or anywhere near heartbreaking. Yeah. Okay, just jump to the bottom. Let's see if I can find where we were before or not. Oh man, so many questions. Appreciate all of the questions, guys. Doing my best. Hopefully, as always, people are just having fun hanging out and talking to each other in the chat as we go. Okay, found where we were. Let's see here. Have I ever washed a card, lost a binder, or had a really bad deal or trade? Nope. I've been very fortunate. Nothing bad so far. The worst ever deal or trade or buy I ever made was just a modern bulk collection I bought when I was really new into the hobby, and a lot of the cards were just in bad condition. But I paid $50 for a lot of modern cards, and I learned pretty quick that it's just not, when they're in bad condition and you have a ton of bulk, it's just not that enjoyable. But it was still fun. I still had a great time going through it, so it wasn't that bad. But then I was like, all right, what am I going to do with all this? Evan Hauser says, what do you think improves the collectability of a set more, pull rates or the Pokemon in the set? I can't answer that. It's got to be both. I think that pull rates, if we really went to the extreme and had a 1 of 1s and 1 of 10s, that would matter a lot more than any Pokemon you could put in a set. But within the current format, yeah, I mean, obviously your reverse holo Charizard or non-holo Charizard is not going to sell as well as like the alt art, the worst alt art or something like that. You know, if we look at like your rare, like your very rare card is still going to sell better than like your most popular Pokemon in its least rare form, generally speaking. But like it can be surprisingly close. So that'd be the one way to look at and think about that. But let's see. Sorry if I'm missing questions here. I'm doing my best. Sometimes people don't have like a question mark at the end, and you have to understand I'm looking at a wall of text here and just trying to sort out the questions. Uxnacida says, "What's the longest you've had to wait for a chase card / item?" I mean, I'm still waiting for plenty of items in terms of trying to find them and buy them. So 6 years, 6.5 years since I've been in the hobby, would be the honest answer. So long time, and I might wait forever. I might never get it. Certain cards. So, Jake, how do you feel about those Japanese Flareon, Jolteon, Vaporeon, VMAX summer promos? I really like them. Just feel they're too expensive at the moment. I'm not sure how expensive they are. I have seen them. I think they're cool. I think I know what you're talking about, actually. Let me double check and make sure I know. I think I've seen them in other YouTubers' videos talk about them. Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. I might have it wrong in my head. I apologize. But yeah, generally speaking, without having any significant knowledge on these, generally speaking, anything that is really new and hot, generally right out of the gate, it's going to be more expensive than it will be in a few months. So you're probably right. But not always. And it depends on rarity. Depends on rarity. Hey, Bondo Snipes. Good to see you. Hope you're having a good night, too. Justin Pan says, "Hey Jake, I bought a CD promo Zard from Japan and got a card that was clearly in worse condition. The seller said it was the same card, so I had to compare the holo lead to prove it was different. How common is that for a 100% feedback seller? That sucks that happened. With a 100 feedback seller, like, obviously it's going to depend on the amount of feedback. It can be really easy to have a 100 feedback seller if you've only sold a few things. Another thing is to look at, like, do they just sell Pokemon cards? Do they sell lots of different things, and they're not that experienced in Pokemon cards? They haven't had that much reviews in that. It might have been a mistake, right? Like, I would assume that it was probably a mistake. And there's also the type of thing where people just list a bunch of cards. Like, they list one card, but they have a lot of duplicates of it, and then they just send one out. Not something you should do, right? So, and, but the person, like, not owning up to it or not taking it seriously and then saying it and then claiming it was the same card and then getting proved wrong that it, like, wasn't, that's not a good look as a seller. It's not an honest, way of going about things. So that sucks. Honest thoughts on the Johnny Depp trial, Jamie. I have not been watching it, but I do know what's going on. Imposter Oak says, "Jake, tell us what you think about the Depp trial." I'm sorry, I'm letting you down. I don't know. Patrick Shire says that he'd love to hear a podcast about politics and other things with my girlfriend. Appreciate that. We'll let you know. Evan Hauser says, What do you think influences the collectability of a set? The pull rates and the... Oh, sorry, I answered that already. You would ask it again. Jake, do you collect base set? Oh, people are asking the same questions, or am I just... Okay, Collar Tucker says... Oh, what Manny says, do we touch on your feelings about the Celtics? Happy. So far. Tentatively happy, but the Nets are dangerous. Don't want to underestimate the Nets. Coulter Tucker says, do you collect the Topps Pokemon cards? That is currently what I am working on to remember when my grandma bought some for me as a child. At the time I was disappointed, but now they're nostalgic. That's awesome. Yes, I think a lot of people had that experience where they were very disappointed as a kid, and they were like, Grandma, you bought me like the cheaper wrong ones. These are not the ones my friends have. But that's cool to have that memory, and then as an adult to go after them. That's awesome. And I do collect them a little bit. I have like one completed binder set of like, mostly just like the chrome base with like some even non-chrome foils. I never went super hard after them, and I have maybe 4 or 5 graded examples. A few value. Some of my graded ones are probably pretty expensive now, because I did pick up some of the more expensive ones a long time ago, years and years and years ago. Yeah, Eusebia says that he saw in Liquid Marketplace that the value of the PSA 10 Expedition Charizard was valued at 120,000 on there. Yeah, I actually saw the exact same thing. I was looking on Liquid Marketplace yesterday, I believe, a little bit, and that was one of the cards I looked at, and it was interesting to see, and I don't know what to make of that. Yeah, I don't know. Rocky start. I mean, I don't know what to say about that. I mean, that does not inspire confidence. Let me put it this way, and just speak for myself personally. That does not inspire confidence that like that website is going to be able to do the fractionalization. So far, is going to be able to do the fractionalization and really make this hobby, easier and more liquid, and provide an alternative for people actually buying the physical cards. I think that could exist someday, and I'm not against fractionalization of collectibles, but like everything, it is wrought for scamminess, for taking advantage of people who don't understand things, who don't know things, and I'm not impressed by the salesmaniness and then things like that so far. So I don't have a lot of confidence so far, but I could change my mind in the future. Just being honest, that's just where I'm at. Imposter Oak says, Jake, how do I get you to answer my questions? You just have to write them, and I go through them one at a time. I didn't mean to skip you if I skipped you at all. I do not skip any questions unless I think that they're like inappropriate, or I feel like they've like already been answered for sure. And so if I skip your question, other than those two things, it was completely by mistake, and just there's tons of questions. So, sharing. Oh my god, I always have trouble saying your name. Sharingans and Ninja. Sharingans and Ninja. Peaches or pears? Good peach, but generally I eat more pears. Loving the new setup, looking very professional. Appreciate that. Thank you. Let's see. Cinnabar Analytics says, do you recommend buying raw, non-graded vintage? So with all those types of questions, it's very much which card and what price. Like, absolutely. Like, I recommend buying, like, there's pretty much every era, every single thing. There are things that are going to be you can find value everywhere. I buy literally everything. I'm buying in all eras. It's all going to depend on price. Generally speaking, your large binder, near mint type collection of vintage is what I'd be looking for. Obviously, it's much, much harder to find those. And A lot of them have been put on the market, a lot of them have been bought up, a lot of those cards have not been graded. So uh, it's not an area that I'm like, you know, buying a lot of because I just don't think there's a lot of it, that's worth buying. But those cards are definitely worth buying if they come up and come up at quite a bit under grading value. But again, raw and ungraded vintage could be like unlimited base commons and uncommons in like light play condition. I certainly would not be buying that outside of just you enjoy collecting. That I would not be paying any amount of money for those cards thinking that I'm going to make money on those. Impostor says, Jake, should I invest in MetaZoo? Um, for me, I will just speak about for me. For me, MetaZoo and my experience with MetaZoo has only been to kind of just collect something new, and I'm interested in people's opinions on it and this sort of overall market sentiment and the extreme stonking versus the extreme negativity. It's all interesting, right? And as far as the product itself, I've opened up every set. And I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed some sets more than others, and there are things that I would change about each set. There are things that I think that they could make better and improve upon. But it's new. It's a new game, and it's a new collector universe, and we'll see. We'll see how they do over time, and where the company goes. But I would say I've enjoyed it, but I'm also not waiting patiently every day for the next MetaZoo set. To be honest, but I it's fun. I love collecting. I love cards. I love new stuff, and I like to see what they're doing. And I'm always someone I hope that they succeed and do well. Some of the stonking and the investing ish aspects of that game were definitely a turnoff for me, but not enough that I'm not going to enjoy the product and enjoy it. So and I'm interested in it. Yeah, Dan says data numbers don't lie, but people can mislead with numbers certainly. Yeah, and oftentimes, right, it's not intentional that people are misleading. They just aren't aware of other numbers. That could maybe if shared would give a little bit more of a full picture. I mean, it's such a broad hobby that you could pull two data points and try to make a case for anything. Manual Dexterity says, do you think the level X era cards are fully valued? The pop's pretty low. I know these have moved up quite a bit, but it seems like they could make a big move with a small amount of demand. Yeah, they've already made quite a big move up. They've also fallen, some of them, decent amount. Um, I have the real honest answer. I have no idea. If I didn't have, like, I am not fire selling those. I can tell you that much, particularly my tens. I'm waiting for really high offers. I'm not interested in liquidating those. I also really I like the level X's. I like those eras. I think they're cool, and I enjoy them, and I enjoy some of the Pokemon. So, as a collector, I'm also really, particularly cards that I don't have doubles for. I'm really not ever planning on selling those unless I get really really high offers. So, and I'm sure there are other people who feel the same way. Do the numbers go up over time? We'll have to see. It's been very slow to go up as compared to other things. It's just that classic, rarity versus demand thing. Just like, how much is demand going to be for those over time? I think when those start to become as expensive or more expensive than gold stars, I start to get a little bit like, I'm not sure about that, given how much more expensive the booster boxes are of the gold stars and how much harder it is to pull the gold stars. Now, in some of the level X sets, because there are more level X's than gold stars, to pull each individual level X isn't so far off pulling the gold stars. But you have to keep in mind the gold stars were, we think, right, one and two booster boxes, we think, 1 out of 72, and the level X's were anywhere between probably on average, depending on the set again, and there's mixed data out there on this, but 2 a box maybe we're thinking. So obviously, 1/4 is rare or whatever, roughly could be drastically different. And then I've heard things like the first half of level X's were harder to pull than the second half of level X's in terms of the sets. So yeah, I don't know. I've never been able to get any of that confirmed, which is crazy that we haven't been able to. Part of that just speaks to the fact that there just isn't a lot of that product, and no one's going to sit down and just open thousands of booster packs to try and figure that out. It would cost you a freaking fortune. Imposter Rook says that he's 100% sure Pokemon is a good investment. Rest assured. Ryan M says, what do you think of the newer generation starter Pokemon in the TCG? Seems like they matter a lot less than older gens. I think that if you are genuinely very bullish on the very long term of Pokemon, we're talking 10, 20, 30 years, who knows, but kids are going to love these things. And these Pokemon are going to be old and beloved, and whole generations are going to be into different starters. I think people are way undervaluing the potential, and and in some cases, by definition, overvaluing earlier generations. And I had that thesis for Gen 3 back a while ago, and Gen 3 has popped off. I had that thesis for Gen 4, and I bought a bunch of Gen 4, and that's done really well. And I have the same thesis for some of these newer gens. Now, it's more difficult because none of these cards are as rare, because there's just a lot more printed, and there's going to be so much less attrition because people are keeping their cards in really good condition now. So, part of me does think the Sword and Shield era is going to be the dead era, the worst era for investing in a while. I think if Pokemon dips down in demand for a period, that period will actually do better in the long run than this period now, potentially, if that makes sense for people. So it's one of these weird things that it's always best to invest or speculate during a down time, but it's also it's down because people have given up and they fear that it's not going to recover, and it might not, if it hits those down periods too. So it's hopefully people understand that. Posture Oak says Jake is a Rothschild. I'm not sure what you mean by that. You maybe tell me below what that means, but Pokemon Kevin says, do you feel that there is a gatekeeping in the hobby whereby the old-time collectors are telling others not to collect modern and place value in them, and all the value is in vintage and black and white era? At times I feel new collectors really can't enjoy collecting because of this. I certainly do not do that. Again, at the end of the day, it's supply and demand. And if there's a lot less supply, you don't need as much demand. And if that makes you not enjoy modern, that's just you realizing that there's objective truth in the fact that there's a lot more mint Sword and Shield cards right now out there than there are, Expedition Hollows or Aquapolis or Skyridge Hollows, or, mint Skyridge and Aquapolis Hollows out there. It's just the reality. So it needs a lot less demand in order for it to do well. Now, if modern has way, way, way more demand than vintage, it could still outperform, vintage. Now, there's also the thing that modern has a much lower price point right now than vintage. And so because you can get in at a much lower price point, maybe it is a better investment or better value than these vintage cards. These vintage cards are already so expensive. You know, I can't answer that for you, but I do think that the whole like vintage versus modern debate, other than just speaking like the facts of the pop reports and of the price history, anyone coming out and making any sort of claims that they know what's going to happen in the future and that they know that vintage is going to appreciate better than modern, or they know that modern is going to appreciate better than vintage. I don't know how one can know that. You can make arguments one way or the other. The negative on modern, I would say, is that um, it's not always going to be the new shiny exciting thing. Like there's going to be new, like more modern after it, and I also think it's funny, right, to say things are modern or vintage, because it's possible that like a lot of the modern stuff today we refer to as vintage in 20 to 30 years. Who know? No one can predict any of that. And um, I'm sorry to hear that you feel, personally that, if you do that you feel like you can't enjoy collecting because there's some sort of like people telling people not to enjoy modern. I don't see that or feel that. I love modern, enjoy modern. For me, it is about patience. I often wait, a year or two to really finish a set or build out a set, and I don't mind doing that because that's often when I get the best value. But I have about a third of my, maybe a fourth, I would say, of my collection, and definitely over a third of the actual cards that I own are modern. And in terms of price, probably about a fourth, I would say, are from 2016 to present. So I'm a big modern collector, speculator, whatever you want to say, but I'm going to be honest about what I think supply and demand, and also what I think is a little bit of short-term thinking sometimes in modern collectors around not thinking about like how popular that product is going to be in the future, and not realizing that maybe it's more popular now than it's going to be in 2 years. Some things now, sealed is different than singles, and I think it's totally reasonable if you feel optimistic or positive on Pokemon to buy some sealed at right after a reprint and put it away, and as long as Pokemon does well, it will probably go up in value, over the next few years. I think most people feel that way and agree with that, but there's no guarantee. Anyone telling anyone what they should enjoy or what they should collect, or putting any sort of like negative toxicity about like this part of the hobby is better, this part of the hobby is worse, is just silly. And it's just nice that people enjoy what they enjoy. I think, though, Kevin, like part of what gets conflated is sometimes when people are telling, maybe, people are interested in modern, like maybe, I'm a little bit more bearish than you on it from an investor perspective. It's not telling you that you shouldn't enjoy it, or that, I do think that most of the worst advice and worst takes that I've seen, just to be completely honest, in the past 2 years have been about modern, and have been people who talked mostly about modern. I think that's where some of the bias comes from. Now, however, there's a lot of really good modern channels that are actually talking about data. We like the live that I had, where I had like Alex and Pokemart and Northwoods, like talking about data, talking about their personal experiences, and many other channels like that stuff. I have no problem with at all. I think that's great. I think as long as they're sharing the full data, they're not cherry picking things, and they're not gatekeeping or being toxic, and against anyone in the hobby, then I will happily continue to. I promoted those channels a lot. I've tried to help those channels grow, and will continue to help all channels like that grow. So that's my overall feeling and thoughts on that. I think that there are some modern people that I've seen be kind of gatekeepy against people who just like vintage, and kind of negative back. So and again, I'm not on either side, 'cause I like everything. So, um, but at the end of the day, I do think that the originals, the first appearances, and that happens in every generation, and the rarest stuff that also has good popularity is going to do the best. And that's just common sense. Like, I think every single person in the hobby should agree on that. And if you can't agree on that, then you don't believe in supply and demand, right? Um, yeah, Catch 'em all collectibles saying, I've never heard anyone telling people universally to not collect modern. Ancient Muse says, Jake, because it's easier to pull, do you think it's worth stockpiling Celebrations, Birthday Pikachu's, Blasty, and Venusaur cards? Yeah, so Squeaks and I and Nate, Sub F, had an interesting conversation on this a while ago about like what price point we would each buy, we would each stockpile one of those cards. And I definitely, of the three of us, I believe I was the lowest in sort of the price point I would make. And I won't, talk about the price points that we set, but for me, at this point in history, to stockpile that it would have to be really, really low. Now, in a year or two, depending on where those prices are, I could definitely see myself maybe buying more. So generally, that's how I work. But at this point in history, if you find great deals, go for it. I bought a lot, of I think there are 10 of these, the Gold Star promos, and I got them at like $1 each or 80 cents each in an auction that just went way under value. Like that type of stuff I'm always going to pick up. It's why I end up sort of having some of everything, even if I think something's overpriced, you can always find deals like that. But like I wasn't buying them at like $5 to $10 where a lot of people were buying them, and I still think that there's probably decent value potentially somewhere down the line. $5 to $10. For me, guys, I way, way, way prefer the collectability of this card over the Champion's Path Charizard ETB, even though it's a Charizard. Now, what do I think is going to do better in the long run? I have no idea, because that's a Charizard. But as a collector, to get a new art Gold Star Greninja, which is one of the most popular Pokemon, to get a Gold Star version of that with it, is so much more interesting to me. Putting rarity aside than like the Champion's Path, Charizard promo. Even though I think the Champion's Path Charizard promo is a beautiful card and a beautiful full art Charizard with beautiful colors, by the way. I think it's a cool looking card. It's also rapidly becoming the most graded card in the entire hobby, which is unbelievable how quickly that became one of the most graded cards ever. Pokemon Kevin says, not really universally telling people not to collect, but I feel there's a bit of elitist feeling in the hobby, and modern is being looked down upon. But as a newish collector, there's no way new collectors can afford the vintage that can hold value. So it's all about price point. I have bought tons and tons of modern, ungraded, graded, sealed. So does Dan. Like, it's all about price point. It's just the confidence sometimes that I feel like some people have, that it's like, I'm going to buy a ton of Champion's Path Charizard, just the most graded card ever. I'm going to buy a ton of them at like $10 to $20, or it's definitely 100% a guarantee that if I buy this at $60, like I don't see vintage people talking that way. Now, there are plenty of modern people who don't talk that way, and they give data and whatever. So I think that there's also, you have to understand, Pokemon Cap, that like a lot of the more experienced people who went through the bubble now saw a lot of people kind of grift, I think, off of modern. And so there's maybe a little bit more of a distrust too of that than is probably necessary at this point. And I think, and then there are people who like definitely say ridiculous things or silly things about modern, like modern's trash or like this or that. But like I hear all the time, like vintage is trash, modern is so much better. And it's like, dude, like, I love these cards. They're from my childhood. I like could care less. Like, I could not care less that you think they're trash. Like, who cares? Like, all right, dude. Like, so I would encourage you to have that attitude about anyone who speaks negatively, about things of like, why do you care? Like, who cares? As far as elitism, I think that it's unfortunate, and I think that some people have spread toxicity in this hobby by like implying that I'm like an elitist or something. I've heard that before because I'm telling people that oftentimes the rarest, very expensive stuff may outperform the rest of the hobby, maybe because you're going to have the highest, most high income people sort of bidding on that stuff. And that's the stuff that really sees the really long term exponential growth. Like, we're talking about 30 years from now, could see humongous exponential growth. And I'm basing that off of other hobbies and real data and experiences in the collectible hobby. I'm not saying that's like what it should be or what I want it to be. And it's not because I care only about like rich people or anything like that. And I think it's unfortunate that people spin things in a way sometimes to potentially grow their own following or create this like animosity that isn't there. So that's what I would say about all that. So we're about out of time here, so I am going to jump to the bottom of the chat. Let's see. Candab says, Jake, go to sleep. You are right, sir. Luckily, it is Saturday, so now it's Saturday here, so I can sleep. So Bono Snipe says, would you ever consider a live stream with non-YouTubers who are actually more of the consumer of these videos pushed to the masses to hear a new perspective? So the issue Bondo Snipes with bringing people on is that I don't get a chance to watch their videos, so I don't know if they're able to talk on camera, what they're going to say, if they're trustworthy, if they're going to do something, bad, if they're going to be mean or rude to me or the audience or anyone else. So part of what's nice about, and probably some, there's some people that I've gotten to know a little bit, who don't necessarily have channels, but I've just gotten to talk to and know I would probably trust to come on. But for the most part, you just have to be really careful with that. Whereas if someone has a channel, I can go check out their channel and I can see that they really, I know kind of what they're going to be like and what they're going to do. Okay, got a bunch more questions here. I'm gonna answer questions for 12 more minutes. I'm gonna give you guys 12 more minutes. All right, Pikachu, Jake, do you have a favorite Pokemon artist? I do not. I've been asked that question before, and I just can't pick one favorite artist. So, I tend to have a lot of different more favorite cards, and when I check who the artist is of some of my favorite arts, it's a variety. That's the honest truth. Dima says, with the rise of NFTs, crypto, I think it's also part of why I've never been too much of an autograph collector, because I'm not like a huge fan of any one particular artist. Let's see. Dima, with the rise of NFTs, crypto, and the metaverse, do you see Pokemon moving away from physical cards? If that was to happen, would that boost physical card value? Gosh, no idea, obviously. I don't see them moving away completely, but maybe adding. I mean, certainly first they would just add other things, see how that goes. It is possible. I mean, the only reason they'd move away is if demand really disappeared, and that would be bad for everything. And that would be bad. I would think that would be very bad for the physical card value, both in the short term and in the long term. I think. I don't know how that would be positive. The only positive thing might be that they stop producing more, so it limits the supply and we don't get any more. But I think that really limits the amount of new collectors and engaging people and just the amount of overall interest and demand and attention. And it'd be interesting to see how all that goes. What do you think about Dragon Ball Super, Mr. Piptonax? I like it. I enjoy it. I'm not big into it. big Dragon Ball fan. I have more of like the Panini and the Score stuff, the stuff from like my childhood. Alex P says the MetaZoo long-term opinion. I would say, if I absolutely had to guess, I think that there's probably even chances of it. I would say maybe like, 2/5 chance it really disappears, to be completely honest with you, in the next 4 to 5 years. Maybe 2 out of 5 chance that it is able to sort of stabilize and stay around, but that you don't just see like continued crazy upward trajectory in prices, and maybe a 1/5 chance that it continues to see some significant upward trajectory. If I like had to put numbers on it based on just my experiences in these hobbies. So was basketball talk a thing, Jake? Yeah, so we talked a little bit about it, here and there early on. Thoughts on the Celtics tomorrow? I think KD and is KD playing poorly, or Celtics desmothering? I think that KD is tired from all the minutes that he's been played the last few months to get into the playoffs and in these games. And I'm sure the Celtics fouling him like crazy and also just swarming him and being all over him is not helping. And they just play him so much, and they're really like having him dribble the ball a lot, bring the ball up. They're not putting him in action in places that might get him some easier looks, or looks where he has to like work a little bit less for it. So I don't know. But again, I'm just a dude on the couch, right? So I'm sure I would assume that there are reasons for why they're doing what they're doing, and it'll be interesting to see if they come out with a different game plan. I thought it was super weird how little Kyrie was used in the fourth, considering Durant's struggles and the fact that they were just all over him, and considering Kyrie's success in the first game. Yeah. And then the big news, I don't know if you've heard, but Robert Williams is coming back tomorrow and is going to play. So I think with Robert Williams, if he comes back and even plays 20 minutes, I think you got to pick the I think you got to favor the Celtics to win this next game too, with the way they're playing. But easily the Nets could win. Nets could easily win the next 2 games and even up the series. So it's far from over. Ancient Mew says, Jake, do you think it's safer to keep the UPC sealed or crack it open for those gold boys? I mean, clearly it's safer to keep it sealed. You could always crack it in the future. Sean Harrison, what is the best Gengar card you own? The best Gengar card I own. My favorite, or like the most expensive? The most expensive Gengar card I own might be my like PSA 10, the Expedition Gengar, because I don't own the Skyridge one. Which would be more expensive, and I don't have like the Misaki Gengar in a 10, which I think is even more expensive, I would assume. Although I'm not sure when the last time like a PSA 10 Skyridge or Expedition Gengar sold. They come up pretty rarely. As far as the one I like the most, I do own the Misaki and the Expedition, just not in those perfect grades. And I like all 3 of those cards a lot. I also like Gengar is a great Pokemon. There's also like full art Gengars I really like from like the XY generations. So a lot of cool Gengars in the hobby. Okay. Pikachu says, "Do you have a favorite vending series card?" I got a super chat. Very much appreciate that, Retrograded, and just appreciate all the good questions and the continued engagement and support. And the super chat's just the cherry on top. I appreciate it. Pikachu says, "Do you have a favorite vending series card?" A favorite vending series card. That's tough. I don't even remember the names of them. Honestly, I like some of the trainers a lot. As far as the Pokemon, the Mewtwo's a classic. The legendary birds are, some classic arts there. Some of the hand drawn stuff, like the Electrode's cool. A lot of cool hand drawn stuff. I like the Kangaskhan. But some of those, I would have to like look up the names because they all have like weird names. But like the rule, the player rule, and I don't even remember the names offhand. But some of those I really like. They all have sort of weird names. Let's see. Oh, my computer's freezing. What's happening here? There we go. Okay. Do a few more here. Last couple questions of the night. What set do you own the most single cards from? Base set, for sure. Not necessarily graded, but just like in bulk and everything. Probably then Hidden Fates and then Evolutions. Probably the three. The three that I tell people probably, be careful about investing in, particularly during the hype because of how much there is. Nostalgia says, all the talk on Modern, is it worth investing? Because there are so many cards out there. I think as more join the hobby, Modern today can and will be investable. Yeah, I think it's just a question of, what are the better items, when to buy them, and then how will they do compared to vintage, all things I do not know. And then which vintage items. Some vintage items have done really well, some vintage items have not done super well. Base Boo's heading to bed. Thank you for hanging out. Digimon was huge, had a TV show, movies, TCG, everything, and is barely alive at this point. MetaZoo is highly likely to collapse and disappear like Beanie Babies. Definitely possible. Retrograde saying, join the Patreon, appreciate it. Yeah, adding a new Patreon feature coming soon. Just to give even more, we're going to be doing office hours, where basically once a week for an hour, Dan and I are going to have a block of time where people can come and hang out with us and ask us specific questions on anything. Just trying to add more and more. Christian Diaz says, Jake, you made a very interesting video in the beginning of your channel about some mistakes you made at the beginning. How about during this Mania year? Any mistakes you can mention? So the truth is, Christian, is I've wanted to make a video about mistakes, but everything has just worked out really well overall. There are certainly always things that I could have done that like would have maximized even more money. And there are things that I missed out on that went up that I didn't buy, but there's nothing that I bought that went down. Like I haven't lost money on anything that I've bought. And fundamentally, that is actually like one of my major aims, is not to, of course, never buy anything that goes down, but to be very sort of aware and try to be very thoughtful of risk and be very kind of patient and generally cautious. And so it may sound like a lie to some out there, but truly, Like every single thing I bought, everything that I own that I'm aware of is at the same price or higher than when I purchased it at the moment. Um, uh, because I didn't purchase anything during the high point, during the bubble, except for some extremely rare cards that haven't even come up in auction again to know if they'd go for less. So, and those cards, those very rare cards, I bought really for my private collection. I don't care. I'm just happy to own them. So, there's certainly things that surprised me. The major things that I would say surprised me is the fact how high Evolution singles went, how high in general modern singles went, which I think is now they've come down quite a bit because PSA shutting down, but you couldn't predict things like that. No one could have predicted PSA shutting down like that and being overwhelmed. And then how high Sun and Moon and some X and Y booster boxes got and how quickly they went up surprised me. And I mean everything surprised me, like how fast, oh my god, base set unlimited booster box selling for $35,000. I thought that was stunningly high and terrifyingly high. All of those WotC boxes, how high they got, was scary. The prices on like the Crystal Charizard hitting 25,000, and I mean really every single card outside of like low pop, like some of the Neo low pop, some of the E-Series low pop, and the original Nintendo EX era stuff. I mean, people who've been watching my channel forever know this. Like, those are the only cards that I would have even bought as a collector. And I would not have bought any of them as an investor or speculator. Only as a collector. Those are the only cards I would have even considered buying during that whole period. And otherwise, I would have just waited. And we'll see if my luck continues. Obviously a lot of it is just sort of hard work and being engaged in the hobby and kind of it's understanding some maybe fairly simple patterns. And then, but, unless you were buying a lot at the peak, you did great last year, And so I would love to make a video like that. And I'm sure in the future when if I like a lot of the stuff I'm buying right now, like if it goes down further, I will definitely come out and make videos about how, the idea that we're potentially in like some sort of bull trap right now and that people, like a lot of businesses are buying up a lot of the inventory, but there isn't going to be a lot of like collector demand for this sort of stuff. And so we're going to see it continue to fall. Like if the cards I'm buying right now stay at the same price for the next 3 years, I will not feel like I've made a mistake. I actually just feel like that has a decent chance of what's happening, and I'm just starting to accumulate now. And over the next 3 years, I'm going to accumulate more and more and more of them. But if the cards like halve in price again, now a lot of the cards I'm buying right now, I don't think they really can halve in price because they're so cheap already. Like they'll just be unsellable. I mean, I'm buying some slabs for like under the, way under the price of and under the price of what grading will eventually be. And I tend to buy a lot of low, I'm risk avoidant. But certain trophy cards and things that I'm paying many thousands of dollars for, like if in a few years I can buy them at half the price, I will certainly come out and acknowledge that and share exactly, and I'll share exactly my thinking and why I bought them then and why I think they're at where they are now. So, I've always been very honest about sort of what's happened to me here. Okay, so we're gonna end there. There are a couple more questions that just came in, but all right, rainy day. I haven't seen you in a while, Zakil. All right, last question. What do you think about the current sentiment around the stock market? Maybe I shouldn't have taken this so last. I don't really have much to say. If you want to share your thoughts, but I'm not selling. I'm not really buying more. I'm just sort of holding what I already have personally. I've definitely had a couple of down days recently, but I was at an all-time high maybe a month ago or so. So I'm, still fairly close to an all-time high in the stock market. And For me, any day I could lose 30-40%, not in a day, but in a month or 2 months with how fast trading is these days and how quickly things can swing. So I'm prepared for that. But otherwise, thank you all for hanging out. As always, greatly appreciate the support. Appreciate people subscribing, signing up for the Patreon. Again, with that, you get, monthly market analysis this month. It's actually tomorrow is going to be our Zoom meeting where we all come on a Zoom call together. And Dan is going to share a presentation tomorrow on CGC, which he has planned. We talk about sort of the overall state of the market, yeah, we're adding the office hours and some other things. So, and we're just gonna, keep trying to innovate and do new things in the hobby and things that other people haven't done, or doing kind of shifts and changes on things. And as always, really appreciate everyone's feedback. We did a survey to kind of survey everyone to get a sense of what they liked, what they didn't like, what direction, and we really appreciate people taking the time to do that. And all your feedback we take very seriously. At the end of the day, we want to provide something that you guys all want and continue to want. So we're always open to that kind of feedback. Just please be respectful, that we are human beings and we're trying to do something good and we're trying to do something well, I should say. High quality thing at decently priced. So thanks again, everyone. Subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff. Everyone have a good night. Everyone have a good weekend, and we'll see some of you guys tomorrow. All right, take care.